In our top stories, ANC heavyweights to campaign ahead of the elections, and South Africa challenges EU over restrictions on citrus fruit trade. Good morning. We start with election news. The ANC is roping in its heavyweights to bolster its election campaign ahead of the May 29th general elections. Former party president Thabo Mbeki will be assisting to garner votes for the governing party in Soweto later this afternoon. He will lead a walkabout and meet and greet at the Jabulani Mall in Soweto. Ntebo Mukobo reports.
In an anticipation of the elections that would be tough like never before, the ANC is taking no chance. Party President Cyril Ramaphosa says as their campaign gathers momentum, former party leaders will be called in to beef up their election machinery.
We have many leaders who are going to be coming out to campaign because they are irrevocably ANC and they want to see an ANC victory.
And it starts with former President Thabo Mbeki in the country's biggest township and the ANC stronghold of Soweto this afternoon. Others, including Kgalema Motlanthe, David Mabuza, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka and Baleka Mbete, will soon be unleashed.
A 37-year-old man has been shot dead and another has been critically injured amid a dispute over a water project in Limpopo. The two were shot during a heated argument in a community meeting to finalize recruitment, as well as the appointment of subcontractors in the project to replace water pipes. The incident happened yesterday. Police spokesperson Malisela Lidwaba says the known suspect is still at large.
According to reports, the suspect and a certain group of members allegedly got into heated argument, and the suspect went home to fetch his firearm. When he returned, he opened fire on the group and fled the scene. Police responded together with the emergency medical services after they were alerted about the incident. The two men had sustained several gunshot wounds and were transported to hospital. Sadly, the 37-year-old man was certified dead upon arrival. Police have opened a case of murder and attempted murder.
KwaZulu-Natal Premier Nomusa Dube-Ncube has denied that the provincial government terminated the contract of the AmaZulu King's cultural advisor and praise singer Buzicheni Mdletshe. King Misuzulu Kazwelithini expressed his displeasure about such a move in a statement issued by the traditional Prime Minister Thulasizwe Buthelezi. According to the royal household, Mdletshe plays an important role in preparations for traditional ceremonies like the first fruit ceremony. Dube-Ncube says government will pay for Mdletshe's services as the need arises.
We have not curtailed any services of the king. Mdletshe is still working and he works on the needs basis. In fact, we even, as we talk, he still has the car in his possession, the car that was provided by the government. Whenever the king needs him, he's able to travel with the king and he's paid for those services. What is not going to happen is that he's not going to be having what used to be happen previously with the previous king, where he used to operate as a tour guide. Sometimes he would operate as an advisor, sometimes he would operate as a historian.
Trade Union Federation SAFTU has accused government of exploiting people through the extended public works program. SAFTU says the program does not offer long-term sustainable job opportunities. This follows the 20-year celebrations yesterday of the EPWP in East London. President Cyril Ramaphosa spoke at the event. He said the initiative was launched to promote the creation of work opportunities. Trevor Shaku is the spokesperson for the South African Federation of Trade Unions.
Most of these contracts are merely given to these workers for a period of a year, and then there will be extension by a year. But quite often, even with those who have had the extensions for more than 10 to 15 years, and a reasonable expectation was created to give these people employment, the departments which have been employing and utilizing the skills and the labor power of these workers has actually not taken them forward to ensure that it absorbs them permanently into its own worker role. We have continuously said they are being exploited.
And finally, South Africa's lodged a complaint against the European Union citrus black spot regulations at the World Trade Organization. The matter relates to certain aspects of the regime imposed by the European Union on the importation of South African citrus fruit. The Department of Agriculture and the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition recently announced that South Africa was in talks with the European Union at the World Trade Organization regarding measures like spraying to deal with citrus black spot. It's a fungal infection on fruit. Recapping the top story, the ANC is roping in its heavyweights to bolster its election campaign ahead of the May 29th general elections. Former party president Thabo Mbeki will be assisting to garner votes for the governing party in Soweto later this afternoon. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports Headlines. Cricket, Ngaba Peter and Rassie van der Dussen led the Lions to a stunning victory over the Titans in the Cricket South Africa T20 Challenge semi-final. And in golf, South Africa's young talent, Garrick Higo, is setting his sights on a turnaround at the Zurich Classic. We'll bring you the details just before 6:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very good morning. The Mike 1 into Joburg that was closed earlier has been reopened to traffic. There was a backlog that formed up during the closure, but that is largely sort of dissipated, and the route is moving okay with nothing too untoward going up into the Crown. Maybe a touch busier than you might be expecting, but road open and traffic basically flowing. Durban side this morning, we're just checking some delays on the N2, a little bit sluggish passing the old airport area, or coming down from sort of Umlazi or off the M4, just on that section of the N2 towards Old Airport. It's very slow. The Richmond Road coming up towards the N3, there's a heavy backlog. That's an unusual one for this time of morning. If you're on your way from Marion Hill towards Pinetown, you'll be joining a queue. A couple of issues around Cape Town. Baden-Powell Drive still closed. Full closure at the bottom of Khayelitsha as protest rumbles on in that area. And a section of the M7, Jakes Kervell Drive through Mitchell's Plain, is closed this morning between Morgensteer and the Westport Drive. So just expect a bit of disruption as traffic has to deal with diverting onto alternative routes. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 minutes after 6, good morning. Welcome to SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Thursday morning, getting into the week, certainly turning into a little bit of a busier week than I thought we've had over the last little while. And in fact, we'll get some views on the election campaigns and where they are. And if there's a little bit of fizz maybe lacking from some of the election campaigns, we'll talk a little bit about that. Hear from Mbazima Shalowa in a little while. Someone, of course, who has a lot of experience of his own in political parties. Yesterday, and I was very interested in this because it's one of the biggest things that sort of matters. One of the most important dynamics in our society is around the rule of law. And the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi, she was talking yesterday, and she said several things that I thought were very important. There are lots of different journalists there, and they've got lots of different reports. And she said they've made good progress in rebuilding the NPA. She spoke about the sort of drudgery of institution building, how it doesn't attract a lot of attention, and I'm sure that's right. She said also that that Ronald Lamola, the Justice Minister, and President Cyril Ramaphosa have not interfered in her decisions or her work at all. She praised them for that, or respected them for that. She spoke about some of what has happened. So she said, for example, they have been able to launch prosecutions against former President Jacob Zuma, against the former Secretary General of the ANC, Ace Magashule. She did say that her biggest disappointment is that there isn't yet a single big case and a single big conviction against someone accused in the public mind and from the Zondo Commission of state capture. None of the big state capture cases have come yet. And she said she did think that by now she would have one of those. So she's disappointed in that. And then the other thing she said, and I thought this was interesting, and I'm sure there'll be some comment, and she said that the Stalingrad strategy is a big threat to the rule of law, the sort of arguing and arguing and arguing for everything and appealing and appealing and appealing. And when you hear of the Stalingrad strategy, who's sort of associated with that. So I thought that was interesting as to how where she sees things at the moment and what's actually happening. But I thought that was quite a strong comment as well, the Stalingrad strategy as a sort of threat to the rule of law. I thought that was really a very interesting thing. But I wonder if you're a bit sort of disappointed. I think a lot of people are a bit disappointed in the NPA, and I think she understands that. That was my sense. That's what she's talking about, really, that she regrets that there hasn't yet been a big prosecution. Other things going on at the moment. Bheki Cele, the police minister, he answered a question in Parliament from the DA. In a way, it's one of those sort of clever political questions. The question was, how much money has been spent on petrol for the SAPS VIP protection unit, right? It's a lot of money. It's a huge amount of money. So from the period 2018 to 2022, it's 34 million rand just on fuel for the VIP protection unit. Would you like to know which two provinces? You can't work that out? You really? Okay. It is, of course, Gauteng in the Western Cape. Why? Well, that's where, cabinet ministers are and all the rest, and where they go back and throw. Back and forth, that's the phrase I'm looking for. And the DA saying that the amount of money spent on VIP protection, that budget, has gone up by 25% in 5 years. The crime intelligence budget's gone up by 11% in that time. And I think this VIP protection issue is going to become a bigger issue over time. Former President Jacob Zuma, he has asked the Constitutional Court for a little bit more time to file papers to oppose the Electoral Commission's application to appeal or ask for clarity against the decision of the Electoral Court to allow Zuma to stand as a candidate from Kontuwisizwe. You know the issues around that, and the sort of surprise, I think, for many people in the Electoral Court said he could stand. We don't yet have the reasons, and I sort of worry a little bit that we don't have the reasons. Business Day has an interesting story and an interesting quote from the Energy Minister, the Mineral Resources Minister, but also the Chair of the ANC, Gwede Mantashe. And I've been reporting on him for many years, and this is a sort of a vintage Mantashe quote, right? He was asked how he felt about the EFF saying, and Julius Malema said it at least twice that I'm aware of, that he said they will form a coalition with the ANC and national government if Floyd Shivambu, the deputy leader of the ANC, the deputy leader of the EFF, the deputy leader of the EFF could be made finance minister. Here's the Gwede Mantashe quote. Wherever I have influence, I will never accept Floyd as Minister of Finance because that is a formula for looting. That's the quote. He gave no evidence of the looting. But it's a sort of typical Gwede Mantashe quote. Wherever I have influence, I will not accept Floyd Shivambu as Minister of Finance. And then he goes on to sort of make the claim around looting. But I thought that was very interesting, and I know that people will be looking at that kind of dynamic very, very closely. President Cyril Ramaphosa, he was talking yesterday at the Expanded Public Works Programme, the sort of ceremony to mark 20 years, being extended for another 5 years. You heard about that with Sikla Zikalala, the Minister of Public Works and Infrastructure, yesterday. Ramaphosa saying nepotism will not be allowed. Is there an issue with nepotism in the Expanded Public Works Programme where people are making decisions about who gets the job opportunity? And I presume that's the issue. So who gets the job opportunity and who doesn't? And I mean, for a lot of people, it really matters. Sets you up for life if you get that job at the right moment, teaches you things, really makes a difference to your family, to your community if you get it, makes a difference to someone else in their family and their community if they get it. So I think there is something happening here. And then I was surprised, I suppose a bit disappointed in a way, if I may say, to hear about Sizwe Kapelo, the health spokesperson in the Eastern Cape. And we've heard these claims about that he had basically committed fraud when he submitted a matric certificate when he applied for the job back in 2002. He's now been charged with fraud and uttering. Love that phrase, uttering, but it's a legal phrase, not what I do. And he basically is on bail of 30,000 rand. But you can't lie about your qualifications, whether it's a matric certificate, whether it's an honorary doctorate, whatever it is. You can't lie about it. You mustn't lie about it. And, you've heard Sizwe Kapelo talk about health matters in the Eastern Cape for years and years on this radio station. He's been talking about violent dogs recently as well. And then, of course, in Joburg, just to mention, because it's such an interesting story, Floyd Brink, the city manager, nearly arrested yesterday for contempt of court, basically because the city cut off someone who a court had ordered they should not cut off. And there's a lot of argument about it. They got the spelling wrong and the ID number wrong, so he wasn't arrested. But more interesting than that, I think, is the idea of having a city official arrested for contempt of court, because there have been claims like this before, but I've never actually seen it happen. You know how to get in touch, 086 000 2032, SMS 41391, tweet SFM Radio, and that's Stephen Grootes, send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning, it's 6:15.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more, just to be the one who buys your car. Will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da. We buy cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The University Registrar and Secretary to Convocation, Dr. Joel Baloy, cordially invites all members of the University of Venda Convocation to attend the AGM on Saturday, 11 May 2024 in Polokwane, Meropa Hotel at 10:30. The AGM will consider the Vice-Chancellor's State of Campus report, the President of Convocation report, and amendments to the Constitution of the Convocation. To RSVP and confirm attendance, please visit www.univen.ac.za/announcements or contact Mr. Mashuda Ramarebo on 060-906-1902.
Character will be tested between the great giants of the beautiful game. RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund understand that the first prize is unreachable. However, they want to finish as high as possible. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch RB Leipzig versus Borussia Dortmund on Saturday, 27 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you, Stephen. Yourself?
All right, good. So Thabo Mbeki in Soweto, the ANC campaign, really?
Yes, the former president will lead the ANC's campaign trail in Soweto, and it is the first time since he left office that he will be campaigning for the party.
It's going to be very interesting to see what reception he gets as well.
Yeah, we will. I'm not sure if we are looking forward to it, but we will definitely see.
What else is coming up today?
Reaction following the 20th anniversary celebrations of the expanded public works program in East London yesterday that was led by President Cyril Ramaphosa. The Trade Union Federation SAFTU has accused government of exploiting people through the EPW program, saying that the program does not offer long-term sustainable job opportunities. And then today, the president will deliver the keynote address at the Transport Summit on Universal Accessibility, and the summit marks a significant step towards ensuring inclusivity as well as equal access to the transportation services. It basically stems from the Economic Empowerment Summit of Persons with Disabilities that was held in December of 2022, where the president committed to fostering a transport sector that champions universal accessibility. And respondents in the IC's bid to seek clarity on Section 47, Subsection 1E of the Constitution were given until today to file a replying affidavit. So that's if they are going to oppose the application. We will be monitoring to find out if this is the case.
I think former President Zuma's asked for a bit more time.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting to see how it plays out. We still don't have the reasons from the Electoral Court.
Yes, and also today, Zuma is also expected to address an MK gathering at his home in Nkandla, and the party says the event is an unveiling of the MK party. In court, the 6 men arrested in connection with the hijacking and murder of the Kaizer Chiefs defender Luke Vleers are expected to apply for bail in the Roodepoort Magistrates Court. They appeared last week Friday, and during that appearance, they secured legal representation from Legal Aid, and their lawyer asked that the matter be postponed to today, basically to familiarize themselves with the case. So we are expecting that they will be applying for bail. As well as, just lastly, a reaction from the Eastern Cape Health Department after the arrest of one of its own, that being the Deputy Director of Communications, Sizwe Kupelo, and he was granted bail and is facing charges of fraud, forgery and uttering relating to the alleged forgery of his matric certificate. For the position, he held, as well as for community liaison officer, and then his current position also in the department.
It's a big thing for a spokesperson to be accused of fraud, hey? It's a big thing, actually, because of, the legitimacy you're supposed to carry. And Musa, thank you very much. You'll be listening on the radio.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Your weather around the country: Tshwane fine, not 12 and 29. Johannesburg fine, 11 and 28. Vereeniging fine, 10 and 28. Bombela cloudy at first, otherwise partly cloudy, 18 and 26. Polokwane partly cloudy, fine in the afternoon, 15 and 27. Mahakeng fine, becoming partly cloudy, 12 and 31. Vryburg fine, partly cloudy later, 11 and 31. Mangaung fine, becoming partly cloudy, 8 and 29. Kimberley fine, 11 and 31. Uppington fine, 15 and 35. Cape Town cloudy in the morning, becoming partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh southeasterly, 11 and 20. George cloudy, a light southerly wind, 14 and 21. Gqeberha partly cloudy, a light to moderate westerly wind, 16 and 21. East London cloudy in the morning and evening, otherwise partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh southwesterly, 18 and 23. eThekwini cloudy, isolated showers and rain, a light easterly wind, 19 and 25. Richards Bay partly cloudy at first, otherwise cloudy, isolated showers and rain, a light and variable wind, 20 and 26. And Pietermaritzburg morning fog, otherwise cloudy, isolated showers and rain, 15 and 25.
Durban ladies trust they plan to control the 90 minutes against the University of the Western Cape. However, the students plan to demonstrate their intelligence through victory. KwaZulu-Natal confronts Western Cape. This is the Hollywoodbet Super League. Experience the queens of the beautiful game, Durban Ladies FC versus UWC Ladies FC, on Sunday 28 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
22 after 6, good morning. Well, in the US, the Senate has now approved a bill that will force the owners of the app TikTok to sell it, simply because the company ByteDance is Chinese. Under the bill, companies that provide apps like TikTok will no longer be able to belong to certain countries that the US deems as adversaries. As you know, this is sort of part of the international contest, I suppose not just for land and resources, but also for ways to influence the way you feel and think about certain issues. Adekunle Owelabi is a digital strategist and software engineer, joins us now. Adekunle, good morning.
Hi, good morning, sir. Good morning. Thank you for having me.
So the US Senate says TikTok's owner ByteDance must now sell it. Otherwise, it must be closed down simply because they're Chinese. What options does the company actually have now? I mean, are they going to be able to fight this?
The CEO has actually reacted to this law that was passed yesterday on Wednesday, and he mentioned, and is being quoted by top news agencies in the US, that he did mention that we're not going anywhere, as it was quoted, and he has vowed that he's going to fight this, and they're saying that they're not going to back down from this threat that TikTok is facing in the US.
The main claim from the Americans seems to be that TikTok is gathering information about people from its users, and it's sending that information back to the Chinese government. That's the claim. But does TikTok gather any more information about its users than Facebook or Instagram do?
Good question, Stephen, and that has also been what critics have been discussing, knowing that the algorithm regarding this platforms, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, they are quite similar. And they do not even think this allegation holds water, but being government, the United States and also United Kingdom, they've actually been raising their concern regarding the data, and they did ask the TikTok CEO one of those grilling sessions that he had with the Senate, and if China would ask ByteDance to hand over the data of the users, and they did mention that they would not hand it over, but the U.S. government, they are just concerned and about the influence of China, obviously, and knowing that ByteDance is a Chinese company.
In the US, 170 million people use TikTok. I think it's half the population. I mean, in a way, haven't people already voted? They voted to use TikTok. If they were that scared, they would stop using it. I mean, if you don't want someone to know something about you, get off Facebook.
Absolutely, it now goes to the it's a freedom of choice and freedom of expression, and the Twitter X now CEO Elon Musk have also voiced his concern and saying that this is against the freedom of speech and expression, and he actually supports the TikTok platform. He's a fan of it, and it still comes to what exactly is it beyond the technology, or is this a diplomacy issue between the United States and China, and of course the CEO it's also concerned about the challenges of what this means. People are already protesting and also fans of TikTok, and people do not want their TikTok to be taken away from them by the United States government.
Adekunle Owolabi, thanks very much indeed, a digital strategist and software engineer. Well, as you know, there is this global sort of contest underway for influence, and one can't help but feel that the United States and China are two of the big players in that, and that TikTok has sort of got caught up in the middle of that fight. Well, in the next little while, we'll find out more from what's happening in Tshwane around disciplinary action and the Royalvale wastewater treatment works. It seems a political storm has broken out. Can you believe it? 26 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
What happened with the cricket last night?
Well, we've got the Lions. They just roared past the Titans, commanding 8-wicket victory. It was the Cricket South Africa T20 Challenge. The match initially marred by a floodlight failure, so the Titans' innings curtailed, setting a revised target under the DLS method. The Titans, who were once cruising at 40 for 1, had their hopes dashed by Lions' young leg spinner Ngaba Peter, who dimmed their lights with a stunning 4 for 18. Despite a Titans' career-best 64 by Jack Lees, it was Rassie van der Dussen who stole the show again, hammering an unbeaten 73 to chase down the target with Themba Bavuma, who finished the job. Now, with this win, the Lions await their opponents from the semi-final. That's against the Dolphins and the Warriors, which will happen later today. Soccer action. Everton inflicted a potentially fatal blow to Liverpool's Premier League title hopes, and they took a huge step towards safety with a 2-0 win over their Merseyside rivals at Goodison Park. Liverpool needed a win in Jurgen Klopp's final derby as manager to move level on points with leaders Arsenal, and they were second best throughout as the hosts claimed their first Premier League home win over Liverpool since October 2010. Yes, Liverpool boss Jurgen Klopp disappointed.
No good thoughts at all. Very disappointed, frustrated, obviously. Had now obviously a few interviews, and I would say we can sum up. It was not good enough. We played the game or let it happen. The game Everton wanted. I scored 2 goals from set pieces. West Ham is waiting and rubbing their hands and hoping that we come there on one leg, but.
Now, Manchester United had to come from behind twice to beat bottom side Sheffield United at home as late goals from Bruno Fernandes and Rasmus Højlund gave Erik ten Hag's side a 4-2 win. Their chaotic victory ended a 4-game winless Premier League run for the Man United team to boost their hopes of European qualification as they moved above Newcastle into 6th. Rugby, the Blitzboks have recalled veteran duo of Siviwe Soyuzwapi and Dylan Sage for next weekend's penultimate 7 Series tournament in Singapore. Sage will return to the Springbok Sevens team for the first time in 4 years and fit again Soyuzwapi for the first time this season. The inclusion of the two stalwarts are amongst the changes made to the squad that finished 6th in Hong Kong earlier this month. On to golf, the Ladies European Tour #1, Bronte Law, will make her debut at the South African Women's Open taking place at the Erenville Country and Golf Estate this week, and headlines a quality field set to tee off in today's first round of the 6.5 million rand event. England's Law adds to the field, which includes 5 former Investec South African Women's Open champions, with South Africa's Leanne Pace and Tandy McCallum, England's Alice Hewson, India's Diksha Dega, and Norway's Marianne Skarpnord. And finally, South Africa's other golfer, the young golfer Garrick Higo. He's set to make a comeback at the Zurich Classic today. After challenging PGA Tour season, the 24-year-old has set his sights on a turnaround with only one top 30 finish this year. He's paired up with New Zealand's Ryan Fox in a unique 2-player team format. We'll have more of these and other stories. Sports, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Well, more on a criminal record and whether that can stop you getting a job in the next half hour. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, respondents wish to oppose the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order which paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the Umkhonto weSizwe party's candidate list have until today to file answering affidavits in the Constitutional Court. The ANC is roping in its heavyweights to bolster its election campaign ahead of the May 29th general elections. Former party president Thabo Mbeki will be assisting to garner votes for the governing party in Soweto later this afternoon. And police have clashed with pro-Palestinian student protesters in Texas and California as a wave of unrest intensifies at university campuses across the U.S. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. A reminder, no traffic lights on Esky and Pathlani Drive coming to Pretoria. They've been out all week on Esky and WF and Como, so it's already very heavy back as far as Marabastad and getting back towards Van der Hof territory. Joburg's Mike 1 closed earlier this morning at Boyson's. It's been open a while now. There is a backlog of traffic. Moving slowly, though, from Gold Reef City through to Empire Road. Crossing the Durban, the Richmond Road, that's heavy this morning. Slightly different traffic pattern. It's been queuing at Marion Hill this week, but from Marion Hill going north up towards the N3 highway, that's quite a heavy backlog. Just watch for some traffic lights out around the Bluff area. There's a power supply problems there this morning. Bluff Road, Old Mission, that sort of area. Cape Town, 2 closures you need to know about. Baden Powell at the bottom of Khayelitsha is still closed. It's effectively closed between Meway and Swartklip Road. Full closure both ways. And nearby, up in Mitchell's Plain, the M7 is closed. We saw this go in yesterday. It's a full closure this morning between Morgensteer Road and Westport Drive. And that's just going to put a little bit of extra spice amongst the normal delays that you get in the Mitchell's Plain area as motorists divert onto alternative routes. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Intaulengla Chela, good morning.
Morning, Stephen.
How are the markets looking this morning?
So the rally that we've been seeing over the past few days is losing steam, with U.S. stocks ending the day mixed as traders digested Meta Platform's light forecast and awaited U.S. GDP numbers, which are also due today. The caution in Wall Street also spilled through into Asia. Those markets trading mixed as investors eyed the impact the U.S. GDP print could have on the outlook for interest rates moving forward. Investors are also taking in South Korea's GDP print, where the economy expanded 1.3% in the first quarter. Looking at the JSE, the local bourse is powering through with another day of extended gains. The all share ended the day close to 0.7% higher. The rand, however, not having a good start as the dollar strengthens. It's currently trading at 19.24 to the greenback.
And Joe Biden, is he going to sign this law to ban TikTok in the US?
It seems like it, Stephen. Now, after years of back and forth with execs from TikTok and the US, it's now taken a stance to ban the use of the app in America. US lawmakers approved legislation requiring TikTok to be divested from its Chinese parent company ByteDance or be shut out of the American market. The law has been introduced because of concerns that TikTok might be sharing user data with the Chinese government. These are claims that TikTok has denied. Now, at the moment, there are about 170 million users of the app in the United States. Now, once President Biden signs the bill into law, ByteDance will have about 9 months to sell the unit or be pushed out of that market. TikTok has hit back, describing the legislation as unconstitutional. The company's CEO has assured users of that the app won't be taken out of the American market. Now, investors in the meantime have raised concerns over this, considering that ByteDance is mulling a US listing. Some analysts are even worried about what this move could mean for US-China relations and whether Beijing will hit back.
And then Meta platforms, Facebook, their half-year outlook disappointing.
Yeah, sticking with the tech sector, Facebook's parent company, Meta Platforms, they reported a jump in first quarter earnings that beat market expectations. But they issued a warning saying that revenue and profit will decline in the second quarter. This comes as it dashed investors' hopes for how much new artificial intelligence tools may boost the company's business. Despite that, it's still quite bullish on these AI tools, saying that it'll be spending more on AI. A rollout of these features have already been made available on apps like WhatsApp, Instagram, and Facebook. And it's going to be increasing their push into AI. It's increased its capital expenditure for the year, pegging it between 30 to 40 billion rand, $40 billion rather. That's from $37 billion. Markets, however, shrugged off this increased spend, with Meta ending the day in the red, down over 15% after hours on the back of this forecast.
And Tarling Lechelep, thank you. Back, of course, in an hour. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise. A continental overview of current African affairs.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Refreshing morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
Botswana's Foreign Minister Lemogang Kwape talking about the British government and the sort of Rwanda deal.
Stephen, that is quite true. What we have picked up from Gaborone is that their foreign minister spoke to the South African media saying that their government, their foreign ministry, was approached by the British foreign secretary and their minister for Africa to request Gaborone to be one of their countries that can implement that scheme, similarly to what is happening in Kigali, in Gaborone. It appears that it is not only Gaborone, Stephen, it also includes Ivory Coast as well as Costa Rica, that the British government has been seeking this issue of dealing with the illegal immigrants in Britain. Gaborone just lamenting, Stephen, that they have their own problems to deal with, so it will be unfair for them to can accept that offer coming from Britain.
It's quite a strange thing, isn't it? Talks between the authorities in Niger and the US. This is for the withdrawal of American troops. How's that going?
Stephen, so far what we have seen is it is the high-level meeting of the defense force between Niger and the US, because they have to move out, Stephen, because there's an arrival of the 100 Russian soldiers who are in Niger since last month. Now, they are trying to wind up all those agreements, Stephen, how to deal with those two bases that America had already established in Niger. That was basically on regional level to deal with counterterrorism and global security operation against ISIS and Al-Qaeda operating in West African region. So they are trying to, Stephen, one can say, to phase out these two military bases, and at the same time Niger getting closer to Russia in terms of their military cooperation.
And then Kenya, Somalia, the United States, they've been having a big meeting.
Stephen, this meeting is very interesting that even if US it is losing strength in the Sahel, they are moving now towards the Horn of Africa. That this meeting that was in Nairobi, it was between the high-level ministers from Somalia, Ministry of Defense and the presidency to engage on what they call the high-level meeting on regional security and cooperation. It appears that the US, Stephen, will be training some of the Somalian military in terms of joint training programs, provision of military equipment, and also sharing of intelligence between the two countries. We know that Somalia has been struggling with this Al-Shabaab terrorists in the region, and also their conflict with Ethiopia is also bringing the US into the picture.
And then in our archives, you're taking us back to this day, the 25th of April, 1932.
I think even before we go to the archive, you have missed the one of the president in South Africa pushing our military forces, extension of our military in Mozambique and DRC. That yesterday we saw the presidency extending our peacekeeping missions in the DRC as well as in Mozambique, but not time being specified, Stephen, to say how long will our military be in Mozambique, because we know that there was a winding of the military in Mozambique soon from that SAMIM mission, as well as a SADC mission in the DRC having challenges. So they are keeping those numbers, Stephen, in DRC and Mozambique.
And then it was Frini Janwala in 1932, wasn't it?
Yes, Stephen, that was the birth of Refugee on this day, 92 years. Remember, he passed on in 2023, Stephen, in 12 January last year at the age of 90. But what is interesting about Refugee as we are looking at our 30 years is that he was the first Speaker of the National Assembly of Parliament from 1994 to 2004. He was also the head of the Political Research Unit in the then office of the ANC President Oliver Tambo, the first Vice Chancellor of the UKZN in 2005. And finally, Stephen, she was a journalist also in the UK, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Zambia. Asante sana SG, as to still leading the conversation. SAFM, observing the Freedom Month.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you. Back tomorrow. More news from our continent through the day here on SAFM, 20 minutes to 7.
Be part of the 17th Annual SA Sport Awards under the theme Celebrating 30 Years of Freedom Through Sporting Excellence, with great prizes to be won every week. All you have to do is SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020 to vote for your favorite People's Choice Nominee of the Year. SMS is charged at R1.50. Free SMSs do not apply. The nominees are A. Eben Etzebeth, B. Gardestein, C. Siamtanda Siya Kolisi, D. Percy Tau, E. Kirsten Neuschafer. SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020. Voting line closes at 9 p.m. on the 5th of May 2024. T's and C's apply. For more information, visit dsac.gov.za. Catch the SA Sport Awards on Sunday, 5th of May on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC1 at 8 p.m. Proudly brought to you by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the SA Sport Awards. Hashtag #IsInJustAGame. Hashtag SASA 17th edition.
Any person aggrieved by any political advertisement or political election broadcast that is broadcast by SAFM may lodge a complaint within 5 days from broadcast with the Independent Communications Authority of South Africa, ICASA. To lodge your complaint, please contact ICASA's Compliance Department via telephone number on 012-568-3233. That's 012-568-3233. Or email broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. That's broadcastingcompliance@icasa.org.za. Alternatively, complaintsccc@icasa.org.za. That's complaintsccc@icasa.org.za.
Join us on Afternoon Express Tuesday at 6 p.m. on S3 as we celebrate Workers' Day. Tatu Mambalani shares how to assert yourself at work without being arrogant, and Amy Kleinhans lets us in on how to beat a bad day at the office. And we're making peanut butter balls for that 3 p.m. brain fog. That's Afternoon Express Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Repeat Sundays at 8:30 a.m. only on S3.
Hello, your choice online.
Hi, I need you to help me make a choice.
Well, with Ford, you get to make your own choices. Like on a new Ford Ranger, Ford Puma, Ford Everest, and the Ford Tornado bus. There's a flexible deal for every budget at your nearest Ford dealership today. Limited time offer. Your Ford, your choice. T&Cs apply.
Agenda-setting conversations of the day.
17 minutes to 7. Good morning. You know the number 086 000 2032. Well, earlier this week, you heard from the city of Tshwane. It wants to go to the Labour Court to overturn a decision by an internal disciplinary hearing around 5 city officials implicated in wrongdoing in the decision to give the contract to fix the Rooiwal wastewater works to a company owned by Edwin Sodi. The company failed to do the work. As a result, there was a cholera outbreak. Over 20 people died. The DA administration in the city of Tshwane says the internal disciplinary process was wrong to find the officials innocent of several of the charges, and that on the one charge they were found guilty of, they were imposed only a suspension of 1 month without pay. In other words, the DA says it believes these people, or rather, let me say, in other words, Tshwane says these people are guilty of something more serious than this hearing found and is now going to the Labour Court. The ANC in Tshwane says these 5 people are being targeted. The regional secretary for Greater Tshwane for the ANC, their regional secretary is George Majila. George, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and your listeners. Thank you very much.
You say these 5 people are being targeted. Why do you say that?
Well, look, Stevens, there was a process established by the city of Tshwane with the intention to establish facts as to what transpired. And it's something that we supported as the ANC. And I want us to put a disclaimer up front to say we are not in any way supporting corruption, but we are saying processes should be fair for everybody. So once you establish a process as an organization that seeks to establish facts, and at the later stage, the very same processes that you have established, they come back to you and say, no, these are the findings. You have to accept the findings. And in the event you don't accept the findings, there should be reasons, seriously so, that you are putting forward. But in this instance, there are no serious reasons that the city is putting forward. And we are suspecting that there are malice intent. Because once you establish a process, you must then accept the outcome. But if the outcome that you want to accept, they are that which are only suitable to yourself, then there's a problem. So that's where we are as the city of Tshwane.
Okay.
As the ANC.
Okay, I understand that, but the process and the way that it works is that companies and employees, as I understand it, if they don't like the outcome, have the right to go to a labour court. That's the way that it works. And if there is a suspicion that actually there was a greater act of corruption here, isn't the Labour Court the right body to say that? And if the administration believes there is corruption, shouldn't they try as hard as they can to find out what happened? And so the Labour Court is where you go for that in this case.
As the ANC in the city of Tshwane, we are in no way against such a process, but we are warning that we need a fair process. We don't need electioneering, like on the eve of the elections, the DA want to appear as if it calls for clean governance, while for the rest of the time they have not been saying anything. So we are saying, once you establish a process, you need to respect it. And if you are taking it forward, there need to be serious reasons as to why you are doing that. So that's where we are as the ANC, because remember, we have a track record of fighting for injustices. So wherever injustices rear its ugly head, we have to speak against it. We can't just fold arms and say, no, it's an honest process that is moving. And by the way, Metra himself, the city manager of the city of Tshwane, is a person who has such tendencies from where he comes from, wherein he targets some certain officials who seem not to be who seems not to be taking things his way.
Okay,
so we know him.
All right, but George, I mean, the ANC, you say the ANC has a long track record of fighting injustice. That may be true, but the ANC in government, in national government, and many times there's been a process the ANC doesn't like, and it appeals to the higher body. In this case, that's the Labour Court. It's happened in government where people have been fired, they've been cleared, then there's been another application, another appeal. I mean, history is full of appeals by ANC, made by the decisions to appeal made by ANC people. I mean, what's the difference in this case?
Well, as I said before, that we are in no way against what the process, what the DA is taking forward. But we are warning that it should be a fair process. It should not be like some certain individuals are then targeted. Because remember, we have always raised this question of racism against black professionals. And we are saying, on the eve of elections, where there was a process that started some 3 years ago, and all of a sudden, there was a verdict which indicated that they would want to dog a 1 month salary, suspend them for 1 month. And all of a sudden, they then turn against a decision of their own. Because once you establish a process, the outcome becomes your outcome. So once you have a situation right now where you want to suspend officials indefinitely, then we need to be suspicious as the African National Congress, the majority party in council, as to what is it that the DA seeks to do. But if for any other reason, there are facts that they are able to put forward, then that can be supported. But from where we are right now, we believe that this is electioneering, because
right. George,
they are pushing something that... Yes, sir.
All right, we've heard from you. Thank you. I'm afraid I do need to leave it there. George Majila is the Regional Secretary for the ANC in Greater Tshwane. Councillor Kwena Maloto is the spokesperson for the DA in Tshwane. Kwena, good morning to you. The fact is there was a process instituted by the city. It came to this finding. Why should these officials now have to face a second process just because you don't like the outcome?
No, thank you so much for having me, and thank you to your listeners. I think, first of all, it's important to separate party and state. As the DA, we completely support the city manager's decision to suspend these officials and approach the Labour Court. But it's not a political decision, and it's not a campaigning decision, as George has said. This is a decision made by the city manager who is appointed by council. But as the DA, we fully support this decision. It is completely unreasonable to say that these 5 officials who awarded, and I need to say, 295 million rand contract to Edwin Sodi's consortium, to simply be docked 1 month's salary. You're talking about a few 100,000 for a grossly negligent decision that has cost the city hundreds of millions, and that has resulted inside the people of Hammanskraal getting low quality water. And it's been an issue that's been ongoing for years, even though there hasn't been a direct link made yet between the cholera outbreak and obviously the Rooiwal wastewater treatment plant. The stakes are too high. We made it very clear when Celia Brink became the executive mayor a year ago that we want to see consequence management in the city, and this is consequence management in action. We can't allow for whether, and I guess the SIU that's investigating this will tell us whether or not there was corruption involved, as per many of Edwin Sodi's deals as we've seen them as on the commission. What we are 100% sure about, that this was gross negligence, and hundreds of thousands of residents of Tshwane are suffering as a result of this. And
okay.
Simply say,
if you lose in the Labour Court, I mean, you're going to look a little silly.
I don't think we'll look silly if we lose inside the Labour Court. I think that the reality is we're a party that believes in the rule of law. If we were to lose inside the Labour Court as the city of Tshwane, it would be a decision that we'd have to accept. But on a principled stand, as I said, the amount of people that have suffered because of this decision and it's shown even in terms of our own internal investigation that they were negligent, and these are educated officials that are being paid massive salaries, and it was very clear that this company of Edwin Sodi didn't meet the criteria to actually complete this job. It was in black and white. They had yes, sorry.
All right, I'm going to have to leave it there. I do apologise. Thank you. Councillor Quentin Maloto is the spokesperson for the DA in Tshwane. You've heard both sides of that. Your view on this, 086 000 2032.
Are you blowing your paycheck on car insurance every month? Monica, 39 from Three Rivers, pays just 1,515 Rand a month for a 2018 BMW 320i.
None of the insurance companies has come near to the price I'm paying. I am happy at insurance. I'm going nowhere.
SMS out to 30754 now for a quick quote that could save you hundreds every month. You'll also find out about included benefits like panic assistance and help it out 24-hour roadside assistance. Yusuf, 45 from Tegadal, pays just 700 Rand a month for his 2021 VW Polo.
Help it out. Took the family up to go and see the snow and I got stuck. The service was quick, even though it was in a very remote area. Absolutely phenomenal service from our insurance.
SMS out to 30754 now. That's out to 30754. Outsurance is a licensed insurer and FSP. T's, C's and limits apply. Premiums are risk profile dependent and reviewed annually. Client comments do not constitute financial advice.
It's time to commemorate Izinja's Game, the ones with greatness beyond limits and boundaries. The incredible class on the field, court, ring, bench, and boardroom. This is the 17th Annual SA Sport Awards, celebrating 30 years of freedom through sporting excellence. Experience the SA Sport Awards on Sunday, 5 May on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 at 8 p.m. Proudly brought to you by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the SA Sport Awards. Hashtag Izinja's Game. Hashtag SASA 17th edition.
For the love of the game.
Come test drive the new Ford Territory, the family SUV with a 1.8-litre EcoBoost engine that is both powerful and fuel efficient. Get yours at launch prices from only 590,000 Rand, including an optional service plan for a limited time only. Get to your nearest Ford dealer and test drive the new Ford Territory today. TNCs apply.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag SAFM Sunrise.
5 minutes to 7. Good morning. There's been a case in the Labour Court in which judges ruled a company was wrong to first offer a job to a person and then to withdraw that offer only because they found that that person had had a criminal conviction from many years ago. LexisNexis first offered the job to this person. They did a background check. They found that the person had a criminal record and they immediately withdrew the offer only because of that. Sabir Ahmed Jashbai is a Labour dispute resolution practitioner. Sabir, good morning. Many companies have done this in the past. They've refused to employ someone who has a criminal conviction. Why has the Labour Court ruled in this way?
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you for having me on your show. What is very critical is that in this particular case, remember, as you quite rightly pointed out, he was offered a job, he accepted it. What is important is that he did notify, he did in his application indicate that he had a criminal record. In this particular case, what the Labour Court has found that the withdrawal of the offer after it was accepted, in other words, once a contract of labor has been accepted, then there's an employment contract. However, in this particular case, the conviction for which Mr. Connor the crime for which he was convicted had nothing to do with the kind of job that he was doing or offered, and therefore unrelated to the concept of fair labor practice. And for that reason alone, the court held that this was a violation of Section 6 of the Employment Equity Act, which talks about not discriminating a person simply on the grounds of his religion or class or political crimes or whatever it is he's been charged for.
Okay, so if someone was convicted for fraud 20 years ago and now applied for a job in a bank managing other people's money, the fact that it was fraud, which is sort of dishonesty involving money usually, would that mean that an employer could refuse to employ someone based on that?
It can, depending on again on the outcome. Remember, in this particular case here, is that Mr. O'Connor conceded. He did in his application say that I had a criminal record. In the case where every company is obliged in order to have for its operational requirement to do research into the background of the applicant. So if a person has been convicted of a crime of fraud 20 years ago, obviously it does a carte blanche disqualification. It means the company has to find out whether he is a risk or not, and therefore due diligence is not absolutely excluded.
Do you still have to disclose that you have a criminal record? If you're the employee, if you're, you're the candidate, you must disclose it.
Absolutely, you have to do that at all times because it is important for disclosure to be made so that the employer can make a informed decision.
And I presume, it really gets down to what the criminal record is for. I think this was a shoplifting case many years ago, and the person was a young man. But if it was a case of a crime of violence, I imagine that changes the game completely. You couldn't really force your other employees to work with someone who had a criminal conviction for a crime of violence, for example.
Yeah, it's like, for example, employing somebody in the child care who's been charged previously for child molestation. I mean, whether it's 20 years ago or 30 years ago, he's still tainted by that record, and therefore, unless he is rehabilitated and it is proven that he is rehabilitated, the risk is there, and many people will be very reluctant to work with a person that stature. However, quite rightly, if it is unrelated to the post for which a person is appointed, you cannot disqualify a person from continuing a job, which was happened in this particular case of Mr. O'Connor versus LexisNexis.
Sabir Ahmed Jajbai, thanks very much indeed. A labour dispute resolution practitioner. It's a fascinating case. In a moment, Zwelinzima Vavi and unpaid pensions. Also, the state of our election campaigns. Where are they? You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning at 7 o'clock.
In our top stories, MK Party seeks extension in IEC's Concord application and pro-Palestinian protests sweep across US campuses. Good morning. We start with election news. Respondents who wish to oppose the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order, which paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the Mkhonto weSizwe Party's candidate list, have until today to file answering affidavits in the Constitutional Court. This comes after the Apex Court issued directions in the IEC's application just weeks shy of the 2024 polls. Lawyers on behalf of the first and second respondent, Mkhonto weSizwe Political Party, and former President Jacob Zuma, however, have written to the Apex Court to seek an extension until next week Tuesday. Kenny Mapanga reports.
In the letter dated 24 April 2024, the MK Party and former President Zuma's lawyer states that the time afforded to the respondents is unreasonably short and that it would be impossible to furnish a meaningful answering affidavit within 24 hours. The IEC approached the Apex Court seeking an urgent hearing to bring finality on Section 47, subsection 1E of the Constitution before any votes are cast.
The ANC is roping in its heavyweights to bolster its election campaign ahead of the May 29th general elections. Former party president Thabo Mbeki will be assisting to garner votes for the governing party in Soweto later this afternoon. He will lead a walkabout and meet and greet at the Jabulani Mall in Soweto. Ntebo Mukobo reports.
In an anticipation of the elections that would be tough like never before, the ANC is taking no chance. Party President Cyril Ramaphosa says as their campaign gathers momentum, former party leaders will be called in to beef up their election machinery.
We have many leaders who are going to be coming out to campaign because they are irrevocably ANC and they want to see an ANC victory.
And it starts with former President Thabo Mbeki in the country's biggest township and the ANC stronghold of Soweto this afternoon. Others, including Kgalema Motlanthe, David Mabuza, Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka and Baleka Mbete, will soon be unleashed.
A 37-year-old man has been shot dead and another has been critically injured amid a dispute over a water project in Limpopo. The two were shot during a heated argument in a community meeting to finalize recruitment as well as the appointment of subcontractors in the project to replace water pipes. The incident happened yesterday. Police spokesperson Malisela Lidwaba says the known suspect is still at large.
According to reports, the suspect and a certain group of members allegedly got into heated argument, and the suspect went home to fetch his firearm. When he returned, he opened fire on the group and fled the scene. Police responded together with the emergency medical services after they were alerted about the incident. The two men had sustained several gunshot wounds and were transported to hospital. Sadly, the 37-year-old man was certified dead upon arrival. Police have opened a case of murder and attempted murder.
The city of Cape Town says Baden-Powell Drive between Swartklip Road and Walter Sisulu is closed due to protest action. The city spokesperson Maxine Besaidenout has urged motorists to seek alternative routes.
Baden-Powell Drive is closed between Swartklip Road and Walter Sisulu. The closure is protest-related. All agencies are on scene and motorists are advised to please find alternative routes where possible until further notice.
Further afield and finally, police have clashed with pro-Palestinian student protesters in Texas and California as a wave of unrest intensifies at university campuses around the U.S. At the University of Texas in Austin, the governor sent in state troopers to confront demonstrators who waved Palestinian flags and chanted Free Palestine. The BBC's Will Vernon reports.
Officers in riot gear tackled demonstrators at the University of Texas, arresting more than 20 people. The National Guard had been dispatched to the campus by the state's governor, Greg Abbott, who said the protesters belonged in jail. There were scuffles with police in Los Angeles too, after efforts were made to remove protest tents. Some have blamed the unrest on radical outside elements who have infiltrated campuses. The Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, met Jewish students in New York, condemning the protest there as anti-Semitic and calling on the White House to take action.
Recapping the top story, respondents wish to oppose the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order which paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the Mkhonto weSizwe party's candidate list, have until today to file answering affidavits in the Constitutional Court. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's Cricket South Africa's T20 semi-final action that saw the Lions roar to victory against the Titans despite the lights going out. And in soccer, Mamelodi Sundowns' Rulani Mokoena talks about the tough CAF challenge. We'll bring you the details just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Here's your Pretoria. There's a truck that's overturned on the N4 coming inbound from Bronkhorstspruit, just approaching Donkerhoek. That truck is across the carriageway, so you'll be diverted into the Verge area to get past that. And a collision, a vehicle overturning N1 North at Montana, approaching Sefaka Makato. Big queues from Stormful roadside. Yesterday's run home on Transorania was heavy. This morning is pretty bad as well, coming south through the Dustport Tunnel. Big queues down towards Vom Hagen Street. Joburg, everything where it should be this morning, although there is a stationary vehicle coming into Galuli, so N12 and R24 routes from the east are just starting to backlog into that one. Durban, the Richmond Road remains a heavy backlog from Marion Hill this morning, going up as far as the N3 highway. Also, traffic lights still down on the M7 at Bamboo Lane. That's not a new problem, but the queue going into Pinetown is really busy, and it looks like Stapleton and Eden, those lights might be off. There's queues going into Pinetown using Stapleton as well. Cape Town, two major closures. One is the M7 through Mitchell's Plain, the M7 Jakes Curville Drive closed between Westport and Morgan Steer, so that'll cause some diverting pressures in the Mitchell's Plain area. And Baden-Powell still fully closed between Meway and Swartklip Road as protesting continues to affect that section of roadway. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
7:07. Good morning. You're with SFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Glad you're with us this Thursday morning. Things beginning to sort of heat up just a little bit, I think, in the elections. Former President Thabo Mbeki on the election campaign trail today. We'll find out a little bit more about the current political temperature and sort of, posters. Where are some of the posters? Some of them you see, some of them you don't. We'll talk a little bit about that with Mbazima Shilowa in a little while. We'll talk about the sort of campaign branding. Teba Ikalafeng, we'll speak to him as well. Your mediated conversation. I'll tell you a quick story. I was walking yesterday, a couple of days ago, and I arrived here at the SABC, and a security guard who I see quite often just stopped me and he said, "Look, Stephen, should I invest with Johan Rupert?" And I was like, huh? And then I realized what he was responding to. He was responding to all of these investment scam adverts that you see. And he almost had a smile on his face. I think he knew exactly what he was saying. But, it suddenly triggered this thing in me where you see all of these scam adverts. How do you deal with them? Invest in this cryptocurrency and you will be rich. Invest like this and you'll be like Elon Musk. You really want to be like Elon Musk. Anyway, we'll talk a little bit about that from 8:30. I think it's a really important conversation that we'll be having. So join us for that, please, 7:09.
Durban Ladies Trust, they plan to control the 90 minutes against the University of the Western Cape. However, the students plan to demonstrate their intelligence through victory. KwaZulu-Natal confronts Western Cape. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Experience the queens of the beautiful game, Durban Ladies FC versus UWC Ladies FC, on Sunday 28 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
7:09. Good morning. The Financial Sector Conduct Authority has now published a list of companies that have not properly paid the pension funds contributions to the holders of those funds. In other words, it's published a list of companies that have taken pension contribution from workers but not paid that money into the pension funds that the money is supposed to go to. The FSCA also asking government to take action against these companies. Zwelinzima Vavi is the General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions. Mr. Vavi, good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephen, and good morning to everybody listening.
I'm sure you want action against these companies. What do you think government should do here?
They must be blacklisted until they pay that money back to every worker. They have to be blacklisted. They shouldn't be allowed to do any business with the state. They should not receive any kind of procurement of any kind until they pay all of the billions of rands that they owe. Look, we're talking about lots of money. 4,200 registered companies who have not done this, who have not remitted their pension funds contributions to the pension fund holders. We're talking here about an amount of 7 billion rands and the periods that range between 5 months to 21 months of not paying over the money they deduct from workers and to the other side. We welcome the fact that the FSCA has listed these companies, but we want action. We want stern action so that a message is communicated to all who will be defaulters not to do this. It is totally unfair to allow workers loyally working for you for all of their lives, some of them, and then when they go on to their pension lives, they discover that the employer have not paid over the money deducted from their salaries every month. This is criminal. It requires stern action from the government.
Isn't that the scary thing, that workers often don't know this is happening? And I mean, as a worker, it's very important to know where your money is going. You need to check your pay packet, check your pay slip, and you need to go to your union if you don't know what's going on.
A lot of times, the workers receive pay slips that shows that there's a deduction, and that doesn't alert to them to the fact that the employer is not paying over the deductions to the relevant authorities. This is criminal. This is so cruel for workers who are approaching their pension lives.
Mr. Vavi, I feel I must bring this up. I'm sure you've been following the story of the Trinity International Bible University of South Africa. It's been handing out what it calls honorary doctorates. The Higher Education Department said this week that this institution is not actually registered as an institution of higher education. And I think you received one of these awards a long time ago. You must have been pretty frustrated when you found out about all of this week.
When we found out on Saturday that this institution is not registered, and and I support fully the steps taken by the department to call them to account, because a lot of people would not know that when they are being called and persuaded to come and receive an honorary degree on the account of a contribution that they have made to society, and only to find out that the whole thing is a scam and the company is not registered. This is very, very unfair to all of us, because it somehow pours cold water on the contributions we have made. I'm very proud of the contributions I've made in the struggle for social justice. I'm very proud of the fact that I've stayed very loyal to the cause of workers for decades, and that I have played that role without any due regard to the personal sacrifices that I do, and how painful it will be that now it appears that you are a crook and that you solicited to be honored, and that you are desperate for recognition, and that you may have even bribed and formed part of a effort to get a unregistered company to honor you. It's very unfair. But what can we do? We never check which institution is registered. I was honored way back in 2018, and I only find out in 2024 that the institution is not registered.
So, Lindsay Mavavi, thank you, General Secretary at the South African Federation of Trade Unions. Do appreciate the time. I get the sense that story around this institution is not yet over in some ways. 14 after 7.
Nna le bitso la ka ke bonolo moatlhodi ba ntse ba re ke Miss B morara Miss T moatlhodi the Bonnie B Bonbon, and we'll be now playing Kena on Mondays at 4:30. The day has changed, but the time slot hasn't. So if you're interested in news that's happening with us kids and our peers around the world, don't forget to tune in. See you there.
DA leader John Steenhuisen. What qualifies the DA to run the country?
Firstly, we do not tolerate corruption. And where the DA governs, life is better. And that is why millions of South Africans are moving to DA governments. We still have much more to do. But in the past year, the Western Cape created over 300,000 new jobs and is working every day to become load shedding free. We can bring this DA difference to the rest of South Africa, but only if you vote for the DA.
This political party advertisement was paid for by the political party concerned. The views expressed in this advertisement are those of the political party and not those of the SABC.
Attention to all music lovers. The highly anticipated Metro FM Music Awards are finally here.
Yo, y'all ready?
Purchase your tickets to gain access to the awards ceremony and the live concert happening on the 27th of April 2024 at Mbombela Stadium, Mpumalanga.
Yo, we about to have some fun in here.
You can now secure your tickets from R300 at www.computicket.co.za.
Yeah, man, this is a big night.
With a star-studded lineup of DJs and live performances, don't miss your chance to be part of this unforgettable celebration of talent and music excellence.
Come on, Mbombela, come through. Let's do this.
Hashtag MMA24, Black to the Future. Metro FM, it's where you want to be.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
16 after 7, good morning. Well, we're now 4 weeks and 6 days away from voting day. You may have noticed that there are election posters in just one or two places. I'm kidding, in many places around the country. But it can sometimes feel almost as if this election doesn't quite have the same energy as previous elections. Let me put it to you like this. I can't tell you at this stage what the main issues of this election will actually be. Of course, all of this could well change. Mbazima Shaloa is a columnist, former Premier of Gauteng. He joins us now. Mbazima, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. I mean, I found it a little surprising. If you consider what's at stake in this election, I thought maybe by this stage, maybe it's just me, I thought you would have more energy, more arguments, that kind of thing. Is there something going on in our politics that's making things a little subdued for the moment?
Yes, I don't think that things are subdued. I think what you really have is that we are in an era of social media. So you will find that many political parties think that in posting what is happening, what they are doing today, tomorrow, what they did yesterday, and the positions that they stand for is likely to sway the voter when we know that many people are not here. Secondly, I think parties, especially the well-established ones, would have taken a view that, look, for now, you must consolidate your base, which is why you will find that there is more rallies, town meetings to own supporters. Because if you can get out those core supporters to go out and vote, then your struggle is half won. But if you look at new parties, they are also drawing on people that are not necessarily their own parties. So you'll find that, Musi Maimani or Songezo, I know the PA is not that new, but you'll find them and Action SA have got less of their own members and more of the broader communities. But I think this is going to change, I think, in the next 2 weeks. I go to my village. In my village, by this time, every house, there will be a T-shirt, there will be a pamphlet, there will be someone coming in every day to find out, are you going to vote? Who are you going to vote for? What time? Should we pick you up and all of that? It's not there yet, but I think it's likely to be there because that is another way in which people are convinced about voting. It's not so much the manifestos, and the truth is that in the manifestos, it is for me and you. The rest really couldn't be bothered. So it is me as your neighbor that comes and says, Stephen, I know you don't like Party A, but really, if you can give them a chance and you say, no, but why? I explain and you think, I think I trust Mbazima, so maybe let me try it that way.
Could it be that, you talk about political parties speaking to their base constituencies, and so no one yet is contesting for the floating voter or the middle. So no one yet is, politicians are almost arguing past each other to different constituencies, and they're not arguing with each other in the middle.
Yes, they're not arguing with each other in the middle as yet, but the point I was making is that new parties are trying to contest for that swing vote. But I can understand if I was in the Western Cape as the DA, first and foremost, even though I need to campaign across the country, I have to defend my base. And therefore, I'm likely to put a lot of energy and go into areas in which we have won before to ensure that no vote get lost. But where you are right is that in doing so, whether it's the DA in the Western Cape or Gauteng or the ANC in Gauteng or KwaZulu-Natal, you must not leave behind many who, because of the many parties, because of disillusionment, are beginning to say, you know what, I don't even know who to vote for. Maybe I shouldn't even vote. And not only should we encourage them to go out and vote, we should be trying to win them over to at least one or other party.
And then, Mbazima, at this stage, any predictions? I mean, a lot of people have been talking about former President Jacob Zuma and MK. I know you have your own history with him. Are they going to define the election or have a big impact?
Stephen, my view, and this is not based on any fact, is that they will have an impact in KZN. How big or small the impact is, I don't know. Across the rest of the country, I think it's just hype. For me, the election to watch is Gauteng, Western Cape, and KwaZulu-Natal, not just because of the MK factor, but also because, it is when the outcome is unpredictable that an election is more interesting. But no, it's not even about my history with him. But I really don't think that they'll make any impact. There'll be a hype at the moment, but I think closer to the elections, people will ask themselves, what is it that he's going to do that he couldn't do in 9.5 years? And only the core supporters of him are likely to go with him.
Mbazima Shalowa, thank you. Columnist, former Premier of Gauteng, with SFM, 23 minutes after 7. Tebe Kalafeng is the founder and chairman of the Brand Leadership Group. Tebe, good morning. Nice to talk again. I mean, when you look at the political branding of parties and we see all the posters and their new parties, but is there anything new in the campaigns, in the way that people are trying to attract attention that we haven't seen before? Anything new so far?
Absolutely nothing new that we're seeing so far. I mean, it's all much the same, if you will. They're going for the same old tricks. A T-shirt here, plaster with too much visibility with posters, and repeat the same old slogans that they've done in the past. So I don't think there's much to see, and it's obviously a bit also disappointing, even with the newer guys, whether it's Sarah, which I think is probably a non-factor, or Rise Mzansi, which I thought, they could have honed into a clear particular stakeholder, middle class, and built onto that. But the rest, the heritage of the legacy brands, the ANC, the DA, and you could also put IFP in that, and then you could a little bit also say, in a way, the EFF is a legacy brand. Most of them, they've said nothing new that we don't know.
Could it just be that the world has changed, Tebe, and the campaigning is happening, but it's happening online? And I don't mean on X or in websites. What I mean is through WhatsApp groups or TikTok. And that would mean that, for example, I wouldn't know what Mdu is seeing, and Mdu wouldn't know what I'm seeing because we're on different WhatsApp groups or we have different TikTok feeds. So could it be that the campaigning is happening, it's just where and how it happens has actually changed?
Well, of course that's also happening. So we spoke a bit more the traditional party. We look at Buhari's campaign, for example, the previous president of Nigeria. Most of his campaign was won on sales, on the WhatsApp sales. So what the politicians are learning every day is that they need to pick up the secrets of churches, because churches know that it's about micro targeting and not about macro targeting. It's about speaking to in multiple cells, and collectively those cells speaking to the greater whole. So, of course, we don't see a lot of what they're doing, but what we see in the outward is an indication of what they are taking into behind scenes.
There was a statement this week, I think, in News 24, and Dumaseni and Tuli, head of elections for the ANC, sort of conceded they had been too late to order their posters. Do posters still matter in the year 2024? And I see them everywhere. And I suppose what's great about them is they remind everybody that there's an election, they bring a little bit of atmosphere, they're a way to attract everybody. But the world has changed a little. Do posters still matter?
Well, there you have it, and I think you've so articulated it in that it's more a mobilization, more a reminder, a moment in time, more than the fact that they're going to change. But I think Mbazima said it correctly, that the core base is perhaps going to vote for their core parties. That's not going to change. What the posters do, though, is just a reminder of why should I vote for you again? Just an articulation of what they say. I mean, if you look at the ANC says, if you appreciate what we've done for you for the last 30 years, we're going to do more for that. If you look at the EFF says nothing, but they probably don't need to because they've established their position over the last 10 years, which is it's all about reclaiming the land and reclaiming the national resources. And if you look at the DA, I mean, they floundered everywhere else. They floundered, and I wouldn't be surprised if they perform very poorly in this election, because they have swayed from being a predominantly telling a story that's predominantly middle class, if you will, but in trying to become multi-class, they have gone on to offend and to defend and to deflect, and I'm not sure that's going to work well for them. And those are perhaps your three core ones. And then if you look at IFP traditionally knew that, let us focus our energies here in the KwaZulu-Natal. But now, unfortunately, they've lost the one key driver of their storyteller, which is the late Mangosuthu Buthelezi. And unfortunately, the new incumbent has not had the time, Hlabisa has not had the time to establish who he is and what he stands for, and doesn't even bring in the charisma and that Buthelezi had, for example.
Tebe Ikalafeng, thank you. Founder and chair of the Brand Leadership Group. Your view, 086 000 2032. It's 27 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Nkaba Peter and Rassie van der Dissen.
Yes, the young talent of Nkaba Peter, his spin magic and van der Dissen's batting prowess that got the Lions surging into the final with a commanding win. It was the Cricket South Africa T20 Challenge semi-final that took place at Wanderers Johannesburg last night. Peter, he picked up 4 for 16, restricting the Titans to a below par 131 for 9. Batting first in 18 overs after the game was reduced by 2 overs each. This after a floodlight failure delayed play for around half an hour in the first innings. Van der Dissen backed up that performance with the bat. He powered his way to an unbeaten 73 of 45 balls, hammering 8 fours and a 6, while his 85-run second wicket stand with Ryan Rickleton, 38 of 26, set up the chase perfectly. In the meantime, the Delhi Capitals, their captain Rishabh Pant was at the heart of their comeback, leading his team to a total of 224 for 4. And that was against the Gujarat Titans, took place in Delhi last night, chasing a record 225 for victory. The Titans were kept in the game by South Africa's David Miller. He had 55 from just 23 balls. And Rashid Khan, who blasted 21 from 11 balls in the last 2 overs. But the late onslaught was just insufficient as they finished on 220 for 8. Soccer news now. Mamelodi Sundowns coach Rulani Mokoena is looking ahead to facing Esperance Tunis in the second and decisive leg for a spot in the final of this year's edition of the Champions League. Sundown going to tomorrow's game trailing Esperance 1-0, and Mokoena is emphasizing his tiredness and how he manages by not sleeping.
I'm strong. I have the support of the club. I have the support of the players, which is very, very important. I get constant calls, messages. In fact, my players are the ones that are constantly saying to me, "Hey, can you sleep a little bit? You know, we need you to sleep." They're on my case every day. They say to me, "Can you ask Tammy?" He'll tell you. They're the first ones. "Can you sleep a little bit?" But I can't sleep because the moment I sleep is the moment the people will beat us.
Finally, tennis. Rafa Nadal says he'll only play at the French Open next month if he feels capable enough. He is in action today, and that's at the Barcelona Open. There'll be plenty to look forward to when he heads to the court. He'll be taking on the likes of 16-year-old Darwin Blanche at the Madrid Masters.
Moments, of course, yes. Moments, not. Moments I feel myself enjoying playing on court, practicing against the best players again. I'm feeling myself more or less competitive. And other moments I feel limitations, and then it's difficult, no?
That's a wrap of your Sport on Sunrise. More top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. These new flu bugs that are going around, are they related to COVID-19? We'll speak to the NICD in the next little while. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, respondents who wish to oppose the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order, which paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the Umkhonto we Sizwe party's candidate list, have until today to file answering affidavits in the Constitutional Court. Lawyers on behalf of the first and second respondent Umkhonto we Sizwe party and former President Jacob Zuma have, however, written to the Apex Court to seek an extension until next week Tuesday. Defence Counsel Charles Mnisi has questioned Sergeant Batu Mukhola on why the alleged mastermind behind Senzo Mehiwa's murder is not in court. The investigating officer has wrapped up her testimony at the High Court in Pretoria, where 5 men are appearing for the 2014 murder of the Bafana Bafana captain. And it has been confirmed in Haiti that the long-awaited installation of a presidential transition council will take place today. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
A very heavy backlog on the M1 North in Pretoria. This is running through to a vehicle that has collided just before the Montana exit. You might think, it's Thursday, it's northbound. How bad could that traffic be? Well, I've just put a video up on x.com at Traffic SA. You can have a look at it. It's absolutely jam-packed to be worth avoiding between Stormful Road and Montana. That traffic is really quite extreme. Also quite heavy coming into Pretoria on the N4. This is through Watermeyer down towards the N1. You're going to be asked to sit in some traffic there today. Leaving Soweto, a reminder, roadworks at Maresburg, so the M1 running north is quite busy. Protesting again on the R61. This is just on the Eastern Cape side of the KZN border, so Mzamba is the protest area between Port Edward, KZN, and Bizana, Eastern Cape. That's the route that's affected. Protesters blocking that section of the R61, and there's some quite heavy traffic in that area as well. Cape Town, protesters still closing down Baden-Powell Drive between Swartklip Road and Muir. It's a full closure both ways through the bottom of Khayelitsha, putting a lot of extra traffic on a divert along Spine Road, heading in off the N2 towards Khayelitsha, and the M7 staying closed in the Mitchells Plain area between Morgenster and Westport. A full closure both ways of that section of the M7 Jakes Scovell Drive. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Ntalengla Chele, good morning. How are the markets looking this morning?
Well, Asian shares took a breather today. Most indexes on that end are in the red, with Japan's Nikkei down 2% and the Asia down losing 1.2%. This comes as caution prevails on equity markets as investors await a slew of earnings reports and economic data. U.S. futures also sliding, currently in red territory. The moves follow a mixed day for the stock market as rising treasury yields yesterday placed downward pressure on stocks. So it'll be interesting to see how the JSE performs today, as it's been extending gains despite the caution we've been seeing. The all share closing the day 0.7% higher. We are now seeing some strength come through on the currency front. When we spoke earlier, the rand was at 19.24. It's currently trading at 19.21 to the dollar.
And Zeda rewarding shareholders with a special dividend.
Those shareholders are in for an extra payout. That's as the agricultural investment company returned to profitability, delivering profit worth 12 million rand from a loss of 187 million rand. Now, the group approved and declared a special dividend of 10 cents per share from its income reserves. However, no ordinary dividend has been declared for a second year in a row. So it's just a special treat for those investors. The group said it's not declaring an ordinary dividend because it's still dealing with challenges. Company CEO Johan Leroux noted that volatility will remain for the short to medium term, citing the tough macroeconomic environment and that El Nino weather pattern that has led to drought conditions which are weighing on summer grains.
And then Copper 360 delivering the first copper concentrate in many years.
Yes, that's right. This is the first copper concentrate find in over 2 decades in the Northern Cape. A quick breakdown. So copper concentrate contains 25 to 30% copper. It is the resulting product after the mine has been crushed, milled, and concentrated. Now, Copper 360 has been working to find the copper in Namakwaland for quite some time, and this week's discovery marks South Africa's return to being somewhat of an important copper player in the continent, especially at a time where critical metals are needed. Copper in particular is used in the production of electric vehicles. So as we see more automakers build EVs, we've been seeing investment being poured into the continent. And the recent move now puts Copper 360 in a good position to also get a slice of that pie. Moving forward, the miner remains positive about the production at the Namakwaland plant, saying that it would allow it to more than double its production capacity and output from 3,900 tons to over 7,900 tons per year by 2025.
Ntalengla Chele, thanks very much indeed. Our business reporter, of course, back tomorrow with more business news through the day here on SAFM. 24 minutes to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, calls coming through. Mvusi on the line from the Eastern Cape. Mvusi, hi. You heard that conversation with Zwelinzima Vavi about pension funds?
Yes, and what pains me is that there is no focus on charging these companies or the NPA taking a legal action, or even the FSC taking legal action, because remember, their powers are to ensure they are not just flagging these things, but they need to enforce the prudent financial conduct that is in the legislation, and it's not just about blacklisting them. That we must do. We must do everything to make sure that any company that is operating in South Africa pays, complies with the laws that are regulating, particularly on issues of workers. And I want to encourage even the portfolio committee, the chairperson of the portfolio committee in Parliament, to look into this matter, because you might find out that these companies are experiencing cash flow problems.
Yeah.
Then we've got mechanisms in government through these DFIs, in Toman, the SOEs, to support such companies. If there are delays in their payments, those departments that are delaying must speed up those payments, because you don't want to mess things up.
And isn't that always the great fear, that the money actually just disappears because the company was in trouble, and then you never get it back, and it's your money?
It is a problem, and until we get to the bottom of it, we will flag this time and again. But if we don't address the root cause, because some of the problems are caused by how some business owners are running these companies.
Yeah.
So all those things need to be addressed. Otherwise, you're going to mess up the jobs of those workers.
No, sure. Mvusi on the line from the Eastern Cape. Thank you. I appreciate it. It's an important point, isn't it? Robert and Bombela. Robert, hi. The National Student Financial Aid Scheme. Lots of debate again about that this week.
Morning, Stephen. How are you?
Yeah, I'm well. Go for it.
Stephen, actually, I'm the chairperson of MASA, which is the Mpumalanga Association of Student Accommodation.
Okay, welcome. Yes.
Stephen, we are sitting in a crisis here. What is happening actually is that we have got members of about 300, and we accommodate more than 5,000 students.
Yeah.
Most of our members, Stephen, are not paid by NSFAS since February up until now. What is happening is that those members, Stephen, now they cannot operate because they don't have money to hire the transport of the students, to pay for electricity, to pay for water, to pay for all the other services. And now we have a crisis because most of them, they want to shut down, to close doors, especially for Tshwane University of Technology in Mpumalanga. The reason why they are not paid, NSFAS is saying that their information for registration is not verified. Which is a serious problem that we are facing now, Stephen. We don't know what to do now.
Okay, so Robert, I just want to get this right. You've got students in your accommodation. You have obligations to provide them with transport and other services. You need the money to do that, and you haven't been paid by NSFAS.
Remember, Stephen, from February, we have got students. Imagine that a member has got 100 students from February. The average cost to finance the student is between 2.5 and 3,000.
Yeah.
We have to pay each and every month, but we're paid by NSFAS. The reason is that information is not verified. It's a serious crisis and they're nowhere to be found.
So, Robert, I mean, when you communicate this to people, you hear nothing from NSFAS. Is that right? There's no answer at the call centre, that kind of thing?
There is no answer, Stephen. You call there is no answer. Go to the Department of Higher Education, there is no answer. Our members are now suffering, students. Stephen. Their assets are being repossessed. They can't finance their lives and families.
Sure.
They can't pay their bills. It's a crisis that we are facing. So now we are planning to shut down these residents. But unfortunately, who's going to suffer at the end of the day? The students are going to suffer.
All right, Robert and Bombela, thank you for that, and I'm sorry to hear that. Let's see if we're able to take that up with some of the people. Let's see if we're able to maybe do that for tomorrow. Robert, thank you. Richard in East London, hi. You heard the conversation, you heard both sides of that. The ANC saying that the DA and that the administration in Tshwane is targeting these workers after an internal process found them guilty only on one charge, and now Tshwane is going to the Labour Court. The DA in Tshwane supports that. Where do you sit?
Steve, good morning. I am worried about both sides, that politicians are entering and commenting in a vociferous manner in what they should not be privy to information, the detailed information. Both sides, the A and the ANC, they should not be privy to the detailed information at supply chain as to how was this company contracted, How was it evaluated? At what cost did it put on the table as an offer? Because that's not their space. That's a space of an administration, the city manager. But what we are not hearing from the spokesperson of Tshwane now, correctly, is that so this company was blacklisted. They are not coming out and saying that clearly, because if that company was not blacklisted, there was absolutely nothing that employees or official and supply chain departments could do. There is no way, they have no authority, no power to blacklist themselves. It is the municipality and the city manager who would apply to Treasury for blacklisting of that particular company.
All right, Richard, you sound very familiar to me, but I think we've heard, it's a very interesting point. I think there are other processes here, but I think there is something going on with that. Let's, last call for the moment, KG and Mangung, hi. The Expanded Public Works Program, you got a strong view?
Thank you so much for taking my call.
Good morning. As loud as you can, please.
Yeah. Yes, we are sitting in a very serious crisis. I think if come 29 May, the status quo is going to remain. We must accept as a country that it will be a matter of time before we don't have anything to talk about. Our chances of emerging to be a very strong and prosperous country in the mold of the likes of Singapore, I can even mention Rwanda here in our continent. I mean, if the president does not see anything wrong with going to celebrate 20 years of having people just arrive for duty at 9, 10 o'clock anytime and when they feel like it, and spend the whole day doing nothing, and then think that it is an achievement. It is a problem, Stephen. It's a very serious problem. I would have imagined that at the 20-year mark, we will celebrate that we have opened factories in places like Tabanchu, in Bukabelo, in Harrismith, in Kwakwa. There was a place that was called Industry.
Okay. So, KG, I'm sorry, I hear your point, but I'm battling to hear what you're saying. I can hear you very critical of the Expanded Public Works Program, and that's your right, and I'm sorry, but we really can't hear you clearly. 16 minutes to 8.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
Well, so many people have bumped into in the last few days have spoken about the flu they're suffering from, or the sniffles, or what's happening at home with their children. And it is sort of the beginning of flu season. And I think we also, when we talk about flu nowadays, take it a bit more seriously because of what happened with COVID-19. Professor Cheryl Cohen is the head of the Center for Respiratory Diseases and Meningitis at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. Professor Cohen, good morning. And I'm sorry to say this, but just introducing you reminds me of 2020.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. And I also was having flashbacks, Stephen, but fortunately we're not there anymore.
Well, yes. Welcome back to SAFM. The flu that we're seeing now, and I know that, it is sort of flu season and there are various respiratory diseases. And the obvious question is there any link to what people are reporting to us anecdotally and COVID-19?
So thanks, Stephen. I think you're right. A lot of people have been reporting having respiratory illness, either themselves or even everybody in the family. Even my family, my kids have had a lot of respiratory illness. And I think the important thing about respiratory illness is that when the person is sick and they've got coughing and runny nose and fever, you really can't tell by looking at them what the cause is. And there are lots of different viruses that can cause it. And right now, as we move into the winter, those viruses start to increase because we start crowding together because of the cold, and also the viruses like the cold in terms of surviving. What we do to monitor it, we have surveillance programs in different provinces of South Africa where we systematically test people who come to the GP or the clinic or the hospital with these respiratory systems, so we can really track which viruses are going up and down. And what we can say now is that there is COVID circulating, but it's really, there's no sign that that's going up. So some of these cases are COVID, but it's been really at a relatively low, consistent level for several months now. What we are seeing now is another virus called respiratory syncytial virus that's very important in young children. That's really quite high right now. This is a typical season. And as you mentioned, we're moving into the flu season. So we are seeing some flu. It's still at low levels, but we expect the flu to increase substantially over the next month or so.
Before COVID, there was a sort of pattern to sort of flu circulation. You kind of knew what to expect at certain times. My understanding is, you will know better than I, of course, and I could be wrong here, was that it was sort of fairly consistent. Has that pattern been changed dramatically in the last few years, possibly as a result of COVID? I mean, did you find we didn't have a flu season, or we've had intense flu seasons?
No, so Stephen, absolutely. During the time of COVID, when we locked down and we stopped having the contact which spreads these viruses, there were real changes. For the first year, 2020, even into 2021, these viruses almost disappeared. And then when we started mixing, they went up and they changed their patterns. But that has all settled now. So already last year, we saw a very normal, maybe slightly high influenza season, but at the correct time, and respiratory syncytial virus also. And we would expect this year to have a normal influenza season in the normal winter, because generally the transmission of these viruses has returned to normal, and it's really the immunity in the population, people who've been infected previously, that sort of drives the seasonality as well as temperature. And so we expect to see the RSV season has been completely typical this year. This is exactly the time we expect it to peak, and we would expect flu to come now in the winter and to be a typical flu season. Although we know even before COVID, flu is quite unpredictable. You can have a very high season or a low season. It changes every year.
And I hate to bring back this reminder of COVID, but are the flu vaccines a good idea?
So absolutely, the flu vaccines are a good idea. I think you're sort of alluding to it, that a lot of people's confidence in the flu vaccine was somewhat eroded by perhaps their lack of confidence in the COVID vaccine. But certainly the flu vaccine is overwhelmingly the best way to prevent influenza. And influenza, it can really be a severe disease. Even if you don't end up in hospital, you have body pains, you have fever, it can last for several days. And people with underlying conditions like heart disease, lung disease, the elderly, people living with HIV, people with TB, pregnant people, really could end up in hospital and even die. And so those people, now is the time. They need to go and get their vaccine to protect themselves. Even if it's not 100% effective and they have a breakthrough infection, it'll make that infection much milder and reduce their chance of ending up in hospital, which for those people who are more vulnerable could really end up being a very, very severe episode. And it's free of charge. So the government clinics all have the flu vaccine right now. And if you're in those risk groups, you can get it free of charge at the clinic.
Professor Cheryl Cohen, thank you. I really appreciate the time. Good to talk again. Head of the Centre for Respiratory Diseases and Meningitis at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. 11 minutes to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Very heavy backlogs on the M1 North this morning into Pretoria's Montana exit up towards Whakamakato. It's a vehicle that overturned. The traffic is, it's impressive. That's one way to look at it, but it's pretty severe is the other way to look at it. There's also at the same time been a crash at Stormful Road at the N1 highway, so some really big backlogging both ways on that section of Stormful. And a reminder, if you're driving to Pretoria, big queues this morning, Hatfield bound, Pretoria bound, the N4, the Emelathleni highway from Rousseau Street through Watermeyer and down towards the N1 highway. Joburg, everything where it sort of should be this morning, nothing that stands out as a real major obstruction. If you travel Bizana, Port Edwards, Eastern Cape KZN, the R61 is restricted and blocked again by protesting just on the, just on the western side of Mzamba. So there's some queuing traffic pressures in that area. Durban's M4 has a fallen tree at the Broadway Durban North exit. So there's a bit of traffic pressure on the M4 this morning approaching that exit on your way to Mhlanga, and some backlogging as usual on the southbound side as well. Cape Town, the N2 situation, there's what's being described as an incident in front of Khayelitsha. This is between Spine Road and Meway. Traffic's grinding to a halt both ways, particularly on the inbound side. It may be protest related. It's just unfolding. We're waiting to hear about that, but there's some heavy pressure into passing Khayelitsha. Baden-Powell Drive remaining closed this morning. It's an extensive closure from Swartklip Road. In fact, probably now from about Eisleben Road right through to Meway. Extensive closure of Baden-Powell because of the protesting at the bottom of Khayelitsha. And the M7, if you're just joining us and missed this update earlier, the M7 in and out of Mitchell's Plain remains closed closed between Morgansteer and the Cedars Avenue. That's via the sort of Westridge area and Westgate part of Mitchell's Plain. So that's put a lot of traffic congestion on local alternative routes in that region. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The Spanish princess tells the riveting story of Catherine of Aragon, a woman who has an eye on the English throne, and nothing and no one is going to stand in her way. It's a vivid and captivating reclaiming of Catherine's story, which has historically been overshadowed by her infamous marriage to King Henry VIII. Tune in to drama, plots, romance, the twists and turns. Stay for the suspense. Channel your inner royalty with The Spanish Princess. Starts Saturday the 6th of April at 9:30 p.m. only on S3.
There's a song that goes, "Money can't buy me love." And that's true. But then they told us all you need is love, which anybody with a mortgage will tell you most certainly is not true. Love won't pay your parking tickets or your student loan. It's also needy. It requires effort, availability, constant care. But more importantly, love requires time. And while money can't buy you love, it can certainly free up some of your time. Time to spend on the things you love, with the people you love. And if you're looking, maybe even time to find the one you love. That's why, after 50 years of investing, we've learned that time is the greatest gift of all. And the good news is, if you invest early, time gives you money. And then money gives you more time to do the things you love. And don't you love that about investing? Ellen Gray, long-term investing. Ellen Gray is an authorized FSP.
Durban ladies trust they plan to control the 90 minutes against the University of the Western Cape. However, the students plan to demonstrate their intelligence through victory. KwaZulu-Natal confronts Western Cape. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Experience the queens of the beautiful game. Durban Ladies FC versus UWC Ladies FC on Sunday, 28 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game. Get your payments done with the utmost security and convenience when you purchase a TV license now. With our new secure payment systems with a one-time PIN, OTP feature, and the choice of receiving your OTP via SMS or email, you can ensure prompt and secure payments. The additional use of capture will protect you against spam and automated data attractions. With TV licenses, you can enjoy watching all your favorite shows or movies that matter to you. Get yours today. Visit www.tvlic.co.za.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
5 minutes now to 8. The time, you know the number, 086 000 2032. Conversations this morning around the expanded public works program, about paying pension funds over by companies. Conversations too around NSFAS and student accommodation. You heard that call from Bombela just a little while ago. There's clearly something going on. And to try and get to the bottom of it is quite difficult. We'll see what we can do. One of the big conversations underway at the moment still around the citizenship, immigration and refugee protection issues brought up in the Home Affairs White Paper. You've heard the Minister, Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, talk about it and explain it, but still, it seems a fair amount of criticism for this paper. Isaiah Mombilo is a member of the SA Refugee-led network in the Western Cape and chair of the Congolese Civil Society of South Africa. Isaiah, good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I'm well, thank you. You say that people haven't been properly consulted in drawing up this white paper. What do you believe went wrong here?
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate the SALEM, South Africa Refugee-led network. Since this started in 10 November last year, we believe that the minister couldn't give enough time for people to do a proper comment. That's the first thing. And also, we noticed that the consideration of the key people who did the comment as requested by the minister, it was not really in proper consideration the way it's supposed to be, and the time frame also, and also the value of other organizations or the consideration of other organizations like a civil society, as human rights, like Scalabrini, like other comments, was not really taken into consideration.
Oh, something's happening to that line there. I'm not entirely sure what it is. We'll just see if we're able to actually sort that line out and just come back to you on that, because it seems to be quite a strange sort of line that happened there. As you know, this is one of those issues that's going to go on for a little while, and you can imagine, of course, when you're trying to deal with things as complicated as citizenship and refugee protection, they are going to be quite complicated. Isaiah, you are still with us. Let's just try this again. Isaiah, the other issue around this, though, is who has to be consulted? And I think many South Africans might feel that what they say is more important than what people from other countries say. Can you understand that feeling?
You understand that?
Can you understand that South Africans might feel they need to be consulted, that foreign nationals should not be consulted? Many South Africans might feel that.
No, I believe many South Africans should feel that. It is also quite good. But you remember, it's a public comment, which require also anyone, any organization, or any civil society, or even foreigner, the concern of that document to also put their comment, where the minister say the comment should be to anyone in any house, oral, it can be one word, and the minister couldn't limit the number of the comments. So that's what we say. It's very important for others to do also consider.
All right, Isaiah, I'm sorry, we're not hearing you clearly on this line. Isaiah Mombelo is a member of the FA Refugee-led network and chair of the Congolese Civil Society of South Africa.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Thomas on the line from Newcastle. Thomas, hi. You've been following this debate around the IFP, the ANC, over the cultural advisor to the Zulu King. We heard from the traditional Prime Minister to the Zulu Kingdom yesterday. Where do you stand on all of this, Thomas?
Steve, my concern is this morning's development where there was an interview with, I think it's the Premier, Madube.
Yes.
Where she was telling an altogether different story to what we've been hearing yesterday. You see, in terms of what has actually happened with Imbongi and what it means and all that. And it is an insult, I feel, to us who are the Zulus. I'm not a tribalist. Mm-hmm. Am I a racist or anything? But don't poke us on for the benefits of politics. Let the politicians know when we're going to elections, leave tribalism, leave racism, leave all those things out because it's about the leading of our country. And if anything, we need to be united. Because if you listen, Steve, to what Matthew said to Elvis on that interview, it's altogether different to what they said yesterday. Yeah. And I'm saying they because she's speaking for the same party the other gentleman was speaking for.
Yes,
and now we are being taken for a ride. In other words, we, the voters, the citizens, are being used for the benefits of politics. At least the best they can do is come back and apologize to us. And they must take the leader of the party in the province in KZN to task and have him apologize for what he's doing. Because it's proven now.
All right. No, Thomas on the line from Newcastle. Thank you. Look, strong views on this, as you can imagine. Very strong views, of course. So, yeah, a lot coming from it. We'll talk about plastic in informal settlements. And just plastic you see everywhere, don't you? That's coming up next. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, MK Party seeks extension in IEC's Concord application and Haiti's Transitional Council to be installed. Good morning. We start with election news. Respondents wish to oppose the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order which paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the Umkhonto we Sizwe party's candidate list have until today to file answering affidavits in the Constitutional Court. This comes after the Apex Court issued directions in the IEC's application just weeks shy of the 2024 polls. Lawyers on behalf of the first and second respondent Umkhonto we Sizwe political party and former President Jacob Zuma have however written to the Apex Court to seek an extension until next week Tuesday. Kenny Mapanga reports.
In the letter dated 24 April 2024, the MK party and former President Zuma's lawyer states that the time afforded to the respondents is unreasonably short and that it would be impossible to furnish a meaningful answering affidavit within 24 hours. The IEC approached the Apex Court seeking an urgent hearing to bring finality on Section 47, subsection 1E of the Constitution before any votes are cast.
AfriForum says it has submitted comments to the Department of Employment and Labour regarding draft regulations on proposed sectoral numerical race targets. In its comments, AfriForum argues that racially discriminatory legislation should be scrapped by government in general and in all facets of society, including employment, sports and education. Ernest van Zyl is AfriForum's head of public relations.
South Africa has had racially discriminatory policies for decades. These are sectoral targets where there's racial targets for the employment sectors. It's just another symptom of it or a version of it. And in this regard, this is pretty much just an example of racial bean counting where a sector has to hire a certain amount of every race to be demographically representative. These types of policies might have names that sound very noble and named like affirmative action or redress, but they are not achieving what they set out to achieve. They pretty much just create a small elite that benefit from these types of policies.
Defence Counsel Charles Mnisi has questioned Sergeant Batu Mukhola on why the alleged mastermind behind Senzo Mehiwa's murder is not in court. The investigating officer wrapped up a testimony at the High Court in Pretoria, where 5 men are appearing for the 2014 murder of the Bafana Bafana captain. Mukhola says the alleged mastermind is known to them as Mehiwa's former girlfriend, Kelly Khumalo.
Why is that mastermind or those masterminders or that masterminder not before court yet?
I do not know, my lord. What I know is that the warrant was not issued. I have no idea, my lord.
As an investigator in this case, you don't know how this masterminder and these accused persons are linked. That you do not know.
I do not know, my lord.
Who is she or he?
My lord, I only know the name by Nonhlanhla Kelly Khumalo.
The Eastern Cape Health Department says it welcomes any move that promotes good and clean governance. The department was reacting to the arrest of one of its own, the Deputy Director of Communications, Sizwe Kupelo. Kupelo was granted 30,000 rand bail by the Suleja Magistrates Court. He is facing charges of fraud, forgery and uttering relating to the alleged forgery of his matric certificate for the positions he held for Communication Liaison Officer and his current position in the department respectively. The spokesperson for the Health MEC Mkhululi Ndimase.
Because this is now a criminal matter being handled by the Hawks, the department cannot and will not comment further on the matter. The department will cooperate with any investigation that seeks to strengthen the integrity of the services that will render to the people of the Eastern Cape.
It has been confirmed in Haiti that the long-awaited installation of a presidential transition council will take place today. The Prime Minister, Ariel Henry, last month said he would step down after gangs prevented him from returning to the country from an overseas trip. The BBC's Yusuf Tahir reports.
The swearing-in ceremony is due to take place at the Prime Minister's office on the outskirts of the capital, Port-au-Prince. The original venue, Haiti's National Palace, has repeatedly been attacked by armed groups, including in the past few days. The United Nations said the situation in Haiti is catastrophic, with the capital almost completely cut off by armed groups. A high-profile gang leader, Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, has insisted that talks over Haiti's political future must include the gangs.
Recapping the top story, respondents wish to oppose the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order, which paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the Umkhonto weSizwe party's candidate list, have until today to file answering affidavits in the Constitutional Court. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you in your SFM sports headlines. It's soccer. Mamelodi Sundowns, their coach is eyeing Champions League victory and is asking 4 years to build that legacy. While the Stormers, they are set to clash with Leinster, aiming for a critical win to secure top spot. Tune in just before 8:30. We'll bring you the details.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good news from Pretoria. The big crash and delay on the M1 going north into Sevaka up towards Montana has been cleared. It caused a delay and a half, but the scene is cleared and that backlog has made its way through. There is a collision just a little bit further south of that on Stormful Road at the N1, so that remains fairly heavily congested. Durban, a breakdown on your way to Pietermaritzburg around the Umlas Road exit. It looks like it may have just been cleared out of the way. Traffic, there's parking back to Camperdown appears to be moving on. Collision on Umhlanga Rocks Drive if you're sitting on your way to Umhlanga, just up by Village Way, and that's causing quite a backlog of traffic as well. Cape Town, urgent alert if you're about to hit the Khayelitsha section of the N2. You might want to duck off before you get there. Big queues forming up. There is what the police are describing as an incident in front of Khayelitsha between Spine Road and Demuir Way, so very heavy inbound from Baden-Powell, heavy outbound from the R300. You'd use those two exits off at Baden-Powell and go north, or off at the R300 and go north onto some alternative routes to avoid that. Just a little bit further south, of protesting in the same area at Baden-Powell Drive, closing that route from basically now Eisleben through towards Mew Way. So that closure of Baden-Powell has been extended. And there's just been a collision on the N7 going north up at the N1 highway. So extra delays leaving the Goodwood area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 8, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Nice to have you along with us this morning. Have you ever wondered why there's so much sort of plastic in certain places? And it's easy to sort of say, well, you know, because people don't pick it up. But it's a lot more complicated than that. A lot of it's got to do with services. We're going to talk a little bit about that in just a few minutes. I think it's an important conversation. And then, do not invest with Johan Rupert. I'm sort of joking. And the reason I say that is that there are all of these adverts, these scam adverts. Invest with Elon Rupert. There's a story there, isn't there? Elon Musk or Johan Rupert or the Oppenheimers or whoever. And it's a scam. You know, that's just not how that sort of thing is done. So we're going to talk about these scams that we see and how to protect yourself from them. I think it's a really important conversation. So that's from 8:30, your mediated conversation from 8:30. Looking forward to that. And it might just be a moment to sort of get some people in the family actually to come and listen to it, because I think people don't realize how good these scams are. And it's really, really very scary. 9 minutes after 8. Good morning.
Durban ladies trust they plan to control the 90 minutes against the University of the Western Cape. However, the students plan to demonstrate their intelligence through victory. KwaZulu-Natal confronts Western Cape. This is the Hollywoodbet Super League. Experience the queens of the beautiful game. Durban Ladies FC versus UWC Ladies FC on Sunday, 28 April at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
10 after 8. Well, I'm sure you've had a day where you've driven through, you know, an informal settlement and seen plastic lying in so many different places, and then going to a sort of smart upmarket suburb and you see far less rubbish. You might see a bit, but you see far less rubbish. And there's a lot going on here. A lot of it's got to do with services and the conditions that people are often forced to live in, and the impact that it has on people. Mduduzi Ntungana is a program officer in the Basic Services Unit of FISIS. It's a development NGO. They're based primarily in East London. Mduduzi, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to your listeners.
So obviously in some places there's a lot of plastic lying around. And I presume if you go past an informal or through an informal settlement, or you live there and you see a lot of plastic lying around, one of the big factors must be that there's no government service that comes and collects it. And obviously in suburbs there is that service that comes and collects it.
Yes, you'd be correct in saying that, Stephen. So what happens in informal settlements that you find that they're denied the service of refuge collection that is taken for granted in upmarket areas, as you've still told now, and in suburban areas. So that the collection, when you're in suburban areas, is that every once a week you're able to put your plastic out and it gets taken by refuge collection. But the stark contrast is that in informal settlements, there is no collection point. There is no basic services that is provided to them, that is afforded to them. So the waste that they generate, they have to do something about it. And in many cases, which is unfortunate, it has to be left on the street or burned in some cases.
And obviously it just builds up. And because plastic doesn't decompose, or does, but over like 1,000 years, every toothbrush you've ever used still exists somewhere. What that means is that, if you dump something there a year from now, it'll still be there. So the cumulative effect of that is huge.
Yes, definitely. And what you find is that what they try to do in informal settlements is that they try to burn it, but there's adverse effects with that it will pollute the air and it poses severe health risks. And in terms of that, it piles up more and more and more. And where you find that there's this lack of service in terms of refuse collection, the people just cry out for municipal assistance, which in certain cases does not come.
I wonder if there's a few other things to it. So in the few times I've been in shacks, I've noticed that often they're the tidiest places you will ever see. People are very careful about keeping their sort of internal place where they live. I mean, far tidier than where I live, for example, in a formal house. And that's because people are almost forced to live in this way, very disciplined about it. So you want to make sure that rubbish is not inside an environment like that. You've got to be very careful. Is that maybe part of it? People focus all of their energy in keeping the space where they live, and it's really hard to do in these circumstances. But they focus a lot of energy in keeping that place clean and tidy.
Yes, definitely, Stephen. So when you within the informal settlement, what you find is that near the shacks, as you've so told, that the plastic will be usually collected and put on the outside or on the periphery of the informal settlement. And unfortunately, sometimes it ends up in the nearby stream. The environmental degradation that happens in that case damages the ecosystem, it damages the periphery of the area, but nearby the shacks, as you said, they try to keep it clean as possible, but the adverse effects, as we've so told now, is that you'll see huge piling up of the dirt and the plastic pollution that occurs.
There are a lot of people who work as waste pickers who live in informal settlements, I would imagine. I would think that maybe, for them, there might be an opportunity, maybe a little bit of organization. I'm no expert, and I can't claim that I am, but it would seem to me that there would be waste pickers living in informal settlements too.
Yes, definitely. So what you see is that many of the waste pickers that are employed by municipalities through programs such as the expanded public works program that individuals have been speaking on, is that they go to the central business district. So the targeted campaigns actually go to the public areas in your suburbs or your business district. So initiatives such as Pick It Up in Gauteng, in your area, in Gauteng, or here in Buffalo City, East London, is that they mainly focus in these areas, but the cleanup initiatives that are done in informal settlements are far and few in between. So that's where the problem is that the systematic approach to address the plastic pollution in informal settlements is not there.
And can residents organize themselves a bit to do it? It must happen in some places.
Yes, definitely. So we've seen in certain cases where we've seen individuals and households in informal settlements come together to have a central location, but they do need support from municipalities. So with residents that we've spoken to across the Eastern Cape, is that they need the huge skip bins, so like a collective area where they can at least have a central location that when the municipality's refuse collection can come pick it up in one location, where it's a huge skip bin, and those seem to work in many informal settlements where it is rather cleaner than the others. The unfortunate part is that many informal settlements go without the central refuse collection point or the big skip bins or support from municipalities in terms of plastic, the big plastic bags to collect waste, or even initiatives to recycle are not there, and the community is not educated in that way.
I suppose, one of the other problems is you have a big skip bin, right? And maybe the first time the municipality comes to fetch it. And the second time they don't, so it's there for 2 months. Now it gets full. And on the top of it is lying plastic that blows everywhere. Now no one's going to want that next to their shack because they're trying to keep it clean and tidy. So it's one of these things where consistency really matters.
Yes. I think that's where the crux of it, in terms of a systematic approach, where you have this certain level of comfort, even as a community in informal settlements, that this will be taken on a certain day. The same comfort and service that people in suburbs have, that on a Wednesday, for example, the refuse will be collected. So I think you're right in pointing that out, Stephen, that there needs to be a certain level of consistency. And once the area is cleaned up, that how can it remain clean in a way that is systematic, that it's a progressive manner in realizing a clean environment and well-being for everyone.
I think there are a lot of people in suburbs in Duduzi who don't have comfort that they'll come on the day they're supposed to. But that's a whole different story in a way. Do you think that councils resist providing this service? And I can think of several reasons why they might. It's expensive. They might feel that people in informal settlements aren't paying rates, which is not really an argument. There might be another thing, is that they really don't want informal settlements to be formalized, and they don't want to start any kind of process that takes things in that direction. So is there a little bit of opposition to providing a service, which shouldn't be that expensive to send a truck once a week to a central point,
Yes, I think certain comments that you've raised are certain comments that I've received in terms of the rate talk, that why should they be provided with those basic services and yet they do not pay, people in informal settlements do not pay rates. What you find is that the government provides for marginalized communities certain basic services. For example, water. People are provided with 6 kiloliters per month with water, and in terms of other basic services. So when it comes to refuse, this is also subsidized by the government, and we believe, like you have stated, that this would be a way of realizing that this basic service provision, in terms of looking after the environment, not only impacts people in informal settlements, but it impacts everyone, because environmental degradation in one area impacts everyone. The degradation of plastic, you get microplastics in the air, and it affects everyone. The air that we all breathe, damage to rivers flow, so the damage there and the degradation there impacts everyone. So as a collective, a society, in looking after one another, so we need to make it something where we feel like everyone, this is a problem that affects everyone, an issue that affects everyone, especially with climate change being a big issue right now.
And plastic's going to affect everyone for a long time if you look at the nature of it.
Yes, definitely.
Right. Mduduzi, thanks very much indeed. Mduduzi Ntungana is the Program Officer in the Basic Services Unit of the NGO FESIS, and they're based in East London. Very interesting to see the impact that plastic has. 19 after 8.
Keeping up with your TV license balance inquiries is now simpler than ever. No more waiting in queues. No more phone calls. Just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 and secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Of the 17th Annual SA Sport Awards under the theme Celebrating 30 Years of Freedom Through Sporting Excellence, with great prizes to be won every week. All you have to do is SMS A, B, C, D or E to 32020 to vote for your favorite People's Choice Nominee of the Year. SMS is charged at R1.50. Free SMSs do not apply. The nominees are A. Eben Etzebeth, B. Gerdestein, C. Siamtanda Siya Kolisi, D. Pesi Tau. E. Kirsten Neuschafer. SMS A, B, C, D, or E to 32020. Voting line closes at 9 p.m. on the 5th of May 2024. T's and C's apply. For more information, visit dsac.gov.za. Catch the SA Sport Awards on Sunday, 5th of May on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 and SABC 1 at 8 p.m. Proudly brought to you by the Department of Sport, Arts and Culture. SABC Sport is the official broadcaster of the SA Sport Awards. Hashtag #IsInJazaGame. Hashtag SASA 17th edition.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
Well, the University of Johannesburg has created a virtual reality experience that they say resurrects the community of Sophia Town after, of course, it was destroyed during apartheid and people were forced out in the 1950s. Sophia Town, really a big part of our history and something that people talk about and look at all the time. Isaac Potgieter is a PhD candidate in virtual reality and cultural heritage at the University of Johannesburg. Also, it says here, an XR researcher and developer. I don't know if that's a typo, if XR means something. Isaac, good morning. Does XR mean something, or is it a typo?
Apparently it does. It means extended reality, and I think we just keep inventing words to describe this kind of work that's so novel.
Well, that's what we've been doing for thousands of years as humans. So how did you... So first, I presume you put on goggles to experience this. What do you experience?
Exactly. So we've been looking at recreating what Sophia Town would have looked like before its demolition in the 1950s, interviewing former residents who actually lived there. This work is funded by the University of Johannesburg through FADA, the Department of Multimedia, the Metaverse Research Unit. I just need to go through because it's not just me doing this. Supervised by Professor Anthony Mbala and Dr. Hammond Beiber. And it started as a research grant in 2021 at the UJ Fab Lab, where Denver Hendricks and Khaleesi and Shona basically initiated it.
And so, how do you experience it? Do you put on one of those headsets?
You put on one of the headsets if you want an individual experience. This is for the Trevor Huddleston Museum in Sophia Town to be a permanent part of their exhibit. It's been exhibited there multiple times. But they're an NGO without funding, so they're currently looking at funders to get the equipment. But essentially, you put on a headset, you look around, or if you've got a big group, you've got a kind of 3D screen that's all around you that you can have a look at, which we're trying to procure.
And are you able to walk around?
You're able to walk around, and we've got quite a lot of different areas that you can visit, mostly on Victoria Street, going into some of the Shebeens, the backyards, the Oden Theatre, and all recreated directly from interviews with people who lived there. So we really needed to get it accurate.
Were there some pictures to work from? I mean, pictures would help you a lot, obviously, and there are some that exist from that time, I understand.
So there are some pictures, but they are mostly of the demolition, and we don't want this experience to be just of the demolition. It's kind of like if I recreated your childhood home, but I only focused on the day you moved out. You know, that's not really doing it justice. So it was crucial for us to talk to people about their everyday lives, what they remember. And if you remember something for 70 years, it's important, right? So mostly it's been oral accounts which we've had to use to recreate it, which has been really, really interesting and novel in this approach.
When you go to an area, and I suppose I say this because I work in radio, but you can be reminded, if you can't hear, of how important sound is. You know, people often focus on the visual on sight because we see that as a sort of primary sense. But sound really takes you to a place. Have you recreated some of the sounds? I don't know how you would even do that.
Absolutely. One thing that was fortunate in this is there was a film made in 1950s set in Sophia Town, and we were able to use a lot of those background sounds to actually play in different areas. So we've got street sounds in the Shebeens and so on that we actually used, as well as incorporating some of the music. And then as you go around, it's not just looking at what it looked like, but you're constantly hearing snippets of stories, the stories that we used from the interviews to recreate the space. So you're kind of listening to our data that we use to recreate it at the same time, if that makes sense.
It's a lot of work to do this. You've got to go and do the primary research, you've got to speak to people, and then you've got to put it all together. I don't even know how you do that, except that you probably work late at night.
Yes, I've been on this since 2021, and it's not quite finished yet, but it's been exhibited multiple times. We're hoping to get funding for the equipment to exhibit it at the museum because, honestly, making it is the difficult part. The equipment is the easy part. And yes, it's a process. So many different mediums come together: audio editing, video editing, 3D modeling, using game engines to code in the interactivity, the interviews. It's been a long road, that's for sure.
And I presume, this is not something that fits on a flash disk. It must use a ton of data.
You'd be surprised. The actual project I work on is quite large, but when you pack it, a headset is actually like a mobile phone that you wear, if you think about it. So it has to work on essentially a mobile phone. So it ends up being less than a gigabyte, the whole experience together when it's compacted.
Sure. Really? Wow. So that's the visual and the sound and everything else.
Can you believe it? I was also surprised.
I presume, this is working well. People are going to do this for all sorts of other projects, and particularly for younger people, it's a way of sort of immersing them in real life history. This is what it was like. And when I was a kid, I love history, but I could never know what it was really like. I could read about it. There was Gold Reef City was as close as I ever got. And I say that sort of with a smile on my face. This is something completely different.
Exactly, and I think it suits South African museums so well because we have a lot of historical spaces which don't necessarily still exist or exist in the same way. And the overwhelming sentiment we got from the former residents we interviewed, who none of them have been interviewed, by the way. They're in their 80s and so on, so that's been a nice contribution of this work as well. But the overwhelming feeling has been, now the youth can understand. Now they can see what we're talking about. Because you go to Town, and it looks like a typical kind of South African neighborhood in a sense, depending on what's typical for you. But to go into VR and to just see, this used to be a city, this used to be massive. There was a lot going on here. It's not something that words can really describe. Even I have been constantly surprised by what I found as I built this thing, just how big it was.
It was called Triumph by the apartheid government, I think.
It was, and then renamed back.
Yeah.
Quite
recently. All right, Isaac Potgieter, it's fascinating. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed that conversation. PhD candidate in VR and cultural heritage at the University of Johannesburg. He's an XR researcher, it's not a typo, extended reality, and a developer. 28 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Rolana Mokoena, the Champions League final.
Yes, he is standing firm, promising a chase for the title. With the team, Sundowns just 2 matches away from glory. They're facing a slim deficit against Esperance. So tomorrow at Loftus Versfeld Stadium, Sundowns aim to overturn that 1-0 deficit. However, Coach Mokoena addressing concerns of player fatigue as the season intensifies. And, of course, this is what he had to say ahead of
Esperance. I had to watch 8 games of Esperance. I've got to then do corrections. And people will say, yeah, but he's talking about fatigue and being tired, the player's tired, but he's got 46 players. But there's only one head coach. And the head coach suffers with the players too. He's got work to do. He's got to suffer and analyze and check and this, and I can't. I'm allowed to. By the way, I'm human, and it's perfectly normal for someone to be tired.
Let's go to the rugby story, which is the Springboks junior coach, Bafana Nhleko, emphasizing development over immediate results. With eyes set on nurturing talents for the Springboks legacy, the under-20 team heads to the inaugural Rugby Championship in Australia.
It's a privilege to really be part of South African rugby at this point in time. It's a privilege to be part of an organisation that's won back-to-back World Cups. Our biggest aim and our biggest desire is to make sure that we can keep producing for them. And if we can produce Springboks out of this group, then we're really on the right track. Performance is always there. We want to do well as a team. We want to do well as a group.
Tennis, Naomi Osaka cruised into the second round of the WTA 1000 Madrid Open with a 6-4, 6-1 victory over Belgian qualifier Greet Minen. And finally, the Irish pair of Rory McIlroy and Shane Lowry are one of the favourites going into the 2024 Zurich Classic. Seeing that they will be playing together for the next couple of days, the pair did get in some practice rounds. However, it turns out that both golfers share a very different schedule, with McIlroy liking to play early morning practice rounds and Lowry does not enjoy early morning practice rounds. But McIlroy says he's still excited about the duo.
Obviously, this is my first time here in New Orleans, and I'm excited to be here. It's a tournament that I've watched on TV for quite a few years, especially since they went to the team format. And Sheena and I have played in a couple of Ryder Cup teams together, and we thought it would be fun to team up together again in something like this. And
we'll be bringing you more sport on SFM around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thank you. Well, next, scams, cryptocurrency scams, investment scams, why you shouldn't invest with Johan Rupert, sort of, or with me. That's coming up next. You're with SFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the DA in Nelson Mandela Bay Municipality will today march against gang violence in the northern areas of Gqeberha. The march is in honour of 3-year-old Emilio Hutchinson, who was killed by a bullet while sitting inside his home during a gang shootout. Respondents wish to oppose the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order, which paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the Umkhonto weSizwe party's candidate list, have until today to file answering affidavits in the Constitutional Court. Lawyers on behalf of the first and second respondent to Umkhonto weSizwe political party and former President Jacob Zuma have, however, written to the Apex Court to seek an extension until next week Tuesday. And it has been confirmed in Haiti that the long-awaited installation of a presidential transition council will take place today. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Not been a bad run through Joburg this morning. We do have a crash, though, N3 South at Heldenays to watch out for, coming down from Giluli through Bedfordview, and also some delays building on the M1 through Malabongwe up towards the Winnie Mandela exit off to the Four Ways area. The crash on the M1 at Montana in Pretoria that caused an amazing backlog this morning. That's all being cleared up, and that traffic flow has made its way through. Durban, easing conditions on the N2 through Spaghetti Junction, Umgeni both ways, but from about now you can just expect some delays building on the N2 South from Umgeni into Spaghetti, and we'll stay busy all day. You come down to what we typically refer to as the off-peak part of the day on that N2 South. Just hit the most amazing wall of traffic. It's there every single day. Cape Town, the N2 inbound remains heavy passing Khayelitsha. A police incident between Spine Road and Muway is being dealt with. That traffic is easing, but it's still very busy. Baden-Powell stays closed between Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha, full closure there. And if you're on your way up into Stellenbosch, quite a big queue approaching Jamestown. That's the R44 up past the airport and on your way into Jamestown direction. Stellenbosch quite heavy for this time of day. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
27 minutes now to 9. The time for your mediated conversation this Thursday morning. If you spend any time on the internet looking at news websites, browsing for something to buy, watching videos on YouTube, you will probably see an advert for an investment scheme or a cryptocurrency. The advert will claim that you'll be able to make a huge amount of money by simply investing a small fraction. They will promise returns that will literally change your life. In many cases, they'll include images of people like the finance minister, Ina Korongwana, or the entrepreneur, Elon Musk, or the billionaire, Johan Rupert. They'll claim that you'll be investing with these people. In some cases, you'll even see videos of news presenters that you know, with a different voice, claiming this person is making a fortune from these investments. These are scams, okay? Let's be clear. They're scams. The people are doing this because they're taking money from you. Unless, of course, you're very careful. So then, how can you tell what is a scam and what is not? And when can you trust an advert for an investment product? How can you protect yourself and your relatives from these criminals? First this morning, Gerhard van der Venter is the executive responsible for enforcement at the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. Then what is a legal advert and what is not? And what can you do if you know an advert you've seen is simply full of lies? Gail Schimmel is the CEO of the Advertising Regulatory Board. And then the rise of deepfakes. How you can see someone you know literally claiming to be to be advertising an investment when you know they're not. Well, Jean Leroux is a research associate at the Sub-Saharan Africa region of the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab based here in South Africa. We start then with the head of enforcement at the Financial Sector Conduct Authority, Gerhard van der Venter. Gerhard, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and let me just start off by saying thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to reach out to your listeners. This is an issue that causes so much distress, and every opportunity to do this is highly appreciated.
Of course, thank you. Firstly, have you seen a big rise in these adverts, these claims that you can make a huge amount of money from these schemes?
Stephen, most definitely, and I think it has a lot to do with technology, social media, Technology is a wonderful thing, and it's of great assistance to all of us, but unfortunately, it doesn't discriminate. It's also of great assistance to scammers. So I think that has a lot to do with it, and I can tell you that scams has very much moved to social media platforms. That's our biggest problem at the moment. And it's getting worse. Maybe it's also a function of the economic situation. But just to give you some more concrete information, I had a discussion with my manager of new cases this morning before we came on radio, and the last 10 months we picked up 246 scams. And to put that in perspective, that is a fraction of what's going on there. Those are just the ones that we've seen. So definitely on the rise. I think if our citizens dare do investment activity on the internet, social media platforms, they are taking a risk that's just not acceptable.
How can you tell what is fake and what is not? And I mean, I kind of almost want to say anything that you see advertising online only is fake, but is that going too far?
Stephen, I think that would be a very safe rule to live by. There is, of course, a couple of very obvious red flags. I say very obvious, but unfortunately, our public are caught all the time. And I think the one right at the top must be unrealistic returns. So if you see an offer, or if you cold called and you made an offer and there's an unrealistic return, and that is anything above, substantially above what you can get through the normal investment channels, you have to be very suspicious, because that is the hallmark of these scammers. They suck you in with a promise of unrealistic returns. Bottom line is, if there was a way to get those returns, that shortcut, listeners must ask themselves, why on earth would this person share it with the whole world? Certainly, if it was me, I would keep it to myself and I would make my own money. But that's right on top of the list, and I'm very happy to put second on that list. Anything on social media, on the internet, be extremely wary. It's highly unlikely that a reputable firm are going to ply their wares on social media. That's just not how the investment business works. So, there's quite a few other vague information, and of course the claim that they don't require an FSCA license, and then there's often a sense of urgency. Invest now so that the opportunity don't go to waste. All of that, big red flags.
I think there are lots of people, because all you hear about is cryptocurrencies, and because it can be difficult to understand, they believe that if you invest in a cryptocurrency, you're going to make money. Now, I'm no expert, but that's not how it works, right? I mean, I presume that a legitimate cryptocurrency product has to jump through loads of hoops before it can be traded in South Africa, and many of them can't be traded in South Africa.
That is very, very much the truth, Stephen. There's no guarantee that if you invest in crypto, that you are certain to make money. It's like any other investment product. There's a risk to it. And in this case, our stance is, and has always been, that crypto is a high-risk product. People have made a lot of money at certain stages in history, but that doesn't mean anything. You cannot take that information and project it forward. And I think there's this misconception in the market that you will know that the FSCA has declared it a financial product and it now regulates crypto providers. And I'm afraid that there's an assumption that gives some legitimacy to, or some comfort about crypto. It is exactly the opposite. We took this step to regulate it because it is a high-risk investment, and we said, let's rather bring it into the fold. But that doesn't mean that the FSCA is saying that it's a safe investment. In fact, in my mind, it's only suitable for a wealthy investor and a smaller part of his portfolio. And trading in derivatives, contracts for difference and so forth, with crypto as the underlying, is an even more risky business because of the gearing effect that it has.
When people advertise scams, do you have any jurisdiction? So your job, as I understand it, as the FSCA, is to ensure financial services companies obey the law. So do you have jurisdiction over people who aren't registered with anyone? They're just lying.
Not really, Stephen. If you think about it, you are right. We are here to keep the industry clean, and we are here to regulate, supervise, and of course enforce the laws with reference to regulated entities. That means people or entities that hold licenses from us. So not only don't we really have jurisdiction in most instances, and I'll explain that just now, but if you think about a platform or an advertisement somewhere on the internet, it's often outside the country and difficult for us to reach. We have an international agreement with other regulators to assist. But these guys are agile, so very difficult to investigate, don't have jurisdiction. There is one exception, of course, and that is if the scam is really built around the dominant reflection that this is financial services business, then it's unregistered business, and then you can investigate and take steps. But most of the time what we do, Stephen, is we actually take the information, we give the entity a short period to explain themselves, and then we issue a public warning.
Thank you very much indeed. Gerhard van der Venter is the head of enforcement at the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. I really appreciate the time this morning. 18 minutes to 9, you're with SFM, your mediated conversation around the investment and cryptocurrency scams that we've seen continues literally flooding social media. Gail Schimmel is the CEO at the Advertising Regulatory Board. Gail, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on.
What powers do you have over adverts that are clearly lying to South Africans that are published on websites?
So it's a difficult one because we have jurisdiction to consider all advertising. Anything that promotes a product or a service we are allowed to consider. But our teeth are not sharp when it comes to a website. Our teeth are very sharp for radio and for TV, but when it comes to a website, our teeth get a bit blunter. And obviously, if it's a rogue advertiser, it's going to be really hard for us to pull because they're not going to listen to us.
Do you actually have jurisdiction in the first place?
So our jurisdiction is very complicated. Do you have all day for me to explain it? But in short, we are allowed to rule on the advertising of a non-member for the guidance of our members. And then broadcasters, so radio and TV, are bound by our jurisdiction in terms of the Electronic Communications Act.
Okay. So, for example, if I see an advert on YouTube that is clearly a lie, is there anything you can do about that? And, I mean, Gail, I've been astonished by some of what we see on YouTube, in terms of the adverts.
Yeah, yes, and those Elon Musk ones particularly are shockers, and we have had a number of complaints about them. The first thing, I just want to take a step back and explain that we do have a cryptocurrency code. And that code is something that we worked with the industry to make a code specific to that industry. And one of the big things in that code is that we require the advertiser to say that you can make a loss of capital. So one of the ways that you can tell if it's a dodgy ad or not is, does it say you may lose capital? Because the ethical advertisers are going to be telling you that you might lose capital in the crypto investment. So we have a code especially for crypto. There are other things in that code, but that's the big one. But yes, the YouTube is difficult for us. We will contact Meta and we will try and have it pulled down, but we don't always have success. It's an international problem. We're working on it at an international level and trying to get higher cooperation from the platforms in this, not just in South Africa, but internationally in the advertising and self-regulatory space.
Gail, I don't know if you can comment on this, but this is what I don't understand. YouTube is owned by Google, one of the world's biggest companies. It makes an unbelievable amount of money from this platform. And it makes the money from people, in this case, from people who are being allowed to lie. So it's taking money from liars to allow them to lie. And this is Google. I mean, at one point they said do no harm. Clearly they've changed. And how can Google allow it continually to happen? I mean, if they can't stop it, then no one can, is my sort of greater point.
It is a worrying aspect. They will argue that they have their internal complaints mechanisms. There are ways that you can report things that you've seen on YouTube. You go into the inner workings and you click report, and they will argue that works. Does it work sufficiently? I would argue not. The other thing I would ask, I would ask consumers, if you see advertising that is misleading, to please lodge a complaint with the ARB. As I said, our teeth aren't always very sharp, but there are two things that happen if you lodge a complaint with us. It might be a situation where we do have the power to get something pulled. We do, for example, have a very good relationship with Google South Africa, so we might be able to get it pulled. The second thing is that it creates awareness. Other consumers can then see that there has been a decision against that advertising, that it is misleading advertising. Because the truth is, we don't get a lot of complaints.
So people don't complain to you, even though they should?
So we have had a number of complaints about that particular scam you referred to, where they're using fake identities and giving you the impression that you're investing with someone very famous. But the other complaints, it doesn't seem to be a thing that's top of mind for South African consumers when they come to the ARB. Possibly the Financial Service Board seeing different things, but we are not seeing a lot of complaints about it.
And you can't act unless you get a complaint, is that right?
I beg your pardon?
You can't act unless you get a complaint.
Absolutely. We are a reactive organisation. We don't have the resources to monitor advertising, so we are reliant on consumers to bring it to us.
In the normal course of things, if you have a complaint, if someone lodges a complaint against a radio or television advert, you would have to hear from the complainant, and you would also have to hear the other side. So the person who actually published the advert, right? So the advertiser would get a chance to respond. I would imagine
we would give them a chance.
Yeah, in the online space, that's really hard because it's very hard to track down who actually placed the advert. It's not like if it's a South African radio station, the advertiser's in South Africa advertising a South African product. On YouTube, the consumer, the person who sees the advert, is in South Africa. The person who placed the advert is who knows where.
It is really difficult, but also because they are advertising a scam or a genuine product, depending on the situation, there will be some sort of contact detail. And we are quite good at getting to those contact details and finding them. They don't always respond because obviously if they are running a scam, they're not going to respond to us. We also work with our international counterparts. So if they're based in another country and another organisation similar to ours in another country might be in a better position to rule on that piece of advertising, then we have a process with our sister organisations in other countries that we refer to them.
I wonder, Gail, if there's a bigger problem facing your industry, and I realise you're the CEO of the Advertising Regulatory Board, and you may not have a mandate to speak on behalf of the industry, but if more and more advertising is moving online and becoming, as everyone tells us, more and more influential, but so many of these adverts contain so many lies, and the entire advertising industry, I would imagine, is in a difficult position. What I'm trying to get to is that it's in the interests of the industry that you're currently working in to stop adverts that lie. Would I have understood this correctly?
100%. We always argue that the reason one needs something like the ARB, the reason one needs to have advertising regulated is because advertising has to be a trusted space. You want that when you make true claims in advertising, the consumers will believe them. And the only way that consumers are going to believe claims in advertising is if advertising is a trusted space. And you're quite right. Scams like this undermine the entire advertising space.
I mean, if it gets worse, it could be the end of the industry in some ways because there'll just be no point.
I don't know if that's. I think that's a very distant future. It would take a long time for it to reach that point. But I do agree with you. This is something that is a concern, not just for the people being scammed, but for the entire advertising industry.
Gail Schimmel, thank you very much indeed. CEO at the Advertising Regulatory Board. Really do appreciate the time. In a moment, the rise of deepfakes. One of the things that makes these adverts so powerful is simply that they have a video of someone you've seen and heard before, sounding like the person you've seen and heard before, even when it isn't. We'll speak to Jean Leroux around that. 10 minutes to 9.
SAFM. guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, we're generally calming down after what was a reasonably busy rush hour, although Joburg had a pretty good run through the traffic this morning. It must be said the highways at this stage looking generally okay, with the exception of a crash on the N3 South at Heldenay. So just after Van Buren Road, you'll pick up a delay there. A little bit of traffic on the N1 from Samran to New Road, but nothing really serious. Just a sort of back end of rush hour clearing through there in the level of volume, I guess. Now, across into Durban, we have the first of the breakdowns today. This is on the N2 going northbound up towards the Gateway exit. So just from Kwamashu, the Kwamashu Highway exit through towards the M41. Traffic is starting to backlog into that obstruction. Cape Town, Baden-Powell Drive, the overnight closure has been extended this morning. It now extends from Eisleben Road on Mitchell's Plain right through both ways to Mew Road in front of Khayelitsha. So it's a full closure of Baden-Powell along the coast. Look for alternative routes around that one. Police incident on the inbound side of the N2 at Khayelitsha still there, but the big delays have really got through. And just a heads up, if you're on the M5 going particularly southbound through Rondebosch, you expect to hit a big wall of traffic from Klipfontein Road moving through towards the Kromboom Road exit. And the problem getting into Stellenbosch this morning on the R44 is no traffic lights at Jamestown, and that's a really big queue for motorists that have left Somerset West. Heavy backlogs direction Stellenbosch in that Jamestown area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
9 minutes to 9 now the time. Continue your mediated conversation around these investment scams, these cryptocurrency scams, and the adverts that you see literally littering the internet and social media. Jean Leroux is a research associate for the Sub-Saharan Africa region at the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab. Jean, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thanks for having me on the show.
Some of these adverts contain videos that really look like the person. They really sound like the person in some cases. And it really looks like a person I've seen and heard advertising something that I know cannot be true. How powerful are these videos, these deep fakes?
Yeah, I mean, as you rightly pointed out to some of the previous speakers, Stephen, it's kind of the crux on which a lot of these scams operate is on having somebody that you know, somebody that you've seen before, somebody that you've got a measure of trust in, basically telling you to take part in these scams. So even though it might seem too good to be true, if you've got Elon Musk or Johan Rupert or an SABC journalist you've seen so many times on the news telling you that this scam is safe, this is something you can invest in, it makes it a lot more compelling for users that come across these scams.
I think one of the problems is that as a human being, once you hear someone saying something, it's difficult to unhear it. I mean, we've seen, claims being made by voice note before. Is that one of the things that gives them a real power? I mean, people are doing this because they know it works.
Yeah, I mean, the technology to be able to do this is something that's kind of like the capabilities of those technologies have increased by leaps and bounds over the last year and a half to 2 years. So it used to be very expensive, very technically difficult to actually pull off one of these deepfakes, both on the audio and on the video aspects. It used to be rather technical and rather difficult to do it, but with the advancements in the technology, the way that it's become more and more accessible for the broader public, that barrier to entry has reduced quite a bit. And what you're getting now is like even like very basic technical competency can have you generate a deepfake which looks and sounds like a person. All you need is a source video, perhaps a clip from an interview, perhaps it's a photo even that you found on social media. If you can find a voice clip of that individual's voice, you can clone their voice as well. And then you just provide it with a script, a written script, which sets out the text that you're asking them to feed back. And all of this is done using artificial intelligence models to replicate the face, to replicate the mouth movements, to replicate the voice, which makes it very, very, very believable.
Is there any way to tell what is a deep fake and what isn't?
So that's kind of like the million-dollar question, quite literally. There are some advancements in detecting these deepfakes, but unfortunately the investment in detecting deepfakes and detecting the content they produce is lagging quite a lot behind the tools themselves. So we're seeing a lot of development in new tools to create new forms of deepfakes and new forms of AI-generated content. But the mechanisms and the tools to identify those is kind of the investment in that is lagging behind. So at the moment, as some of the previous speakers indicated, there's common sense cues is at this stage still the best way to do it. looking for things like accents that don't match up. I think we're quite fortunate in South Africa that we've got a very particular South African accent. And if you, for example, see a deepfake and the accent is a British or a American type of English, that's often a good indicator. Things where they mispronounce local vernacular words or local place names, that's another good indicator. And just simply like looking out for the non-deepfake clues, whether this investment key scheme seems too good to be true. Do they ask you to go onto a dodgy website to fill in your details, which a lot of these scams do? So those type of common sense clues is kind of the way to protect yourself from this.
I mean, it could be entirely possible, I suppose, hypothetically, say if we take the American election, right, to stage a deepfake debate and completely turn around Joe Biden and Donald Trump and have them all using each other's lines, and it could look completely believable. I mean, that's incredibly frightening.
Yeah, I mean, this is now in a kind of a financial context. So you've got, scammers using this to scam people into buying stuff. But the underlying principle of influencing people's behavior is the same. Whether you apply for a scam, whether you apply to an election, whether you apply to a PR campaign for a dodgy organization. So it's the risk that you pointed out is a very clear one. I think to be frank, there is actually I'm not sure if it's still up and running, but there used to be a Twitch channel where you have this fake debate using AI-generated avatars of Biden and Trump. Literally where the audience provides them with topics and then an AI creates a script that then gets fed into the audio and the video models. And then you have this almost televised debate between Biden and Trump running off Twitch based off of this AI-generated content. And you can extrapolate that further as well. I mean, if we're coming into an election season ourselves, you can use these tools to generate clips of politicians, making, invective statements. You can have these clips generate images and videos that can be used to influence people's behavior on election day. Perhaps show a polling station that's burned down. You can show a video of a polling station with no ballots. Those type of things are very real risks going into the elections.
I mean, I don't know how we mitigate against those risks. I mean, I work for the public broadcaster, so I kind of want to say, people will need to maybe learn who to trust and who not to trust, and maybe to go back to slightly old-fashioned broadcasters so that you can tell what is the truth and what is not, because you're trusting the people and the institution. I realize the problems with that, but I mean, it would seem we're moving into a very scary new era. You simply won't know what to trust based on what something looks and sounds like.
Yeah, and I mean, the way that deepfakes operate, they target the way that we experience the world in a very visceral way. I mean, there's so many idioms, things like seeing is believing, and a picture is worth 1,000 words. Everything pointing to how much we rely on sight and sound to perceive the world around us. And deepfakes challenge that directly. You've got this image, this video, this audio clip. You're seeing a person that you know speak. You're hearing it in their voice. But in the back of the mind, you now need to entertain the thought that this might be a deepfake. This might actually be, totally false. It might be something contrived by a machine that's trying to get you into a scam or to change the way that you vote. So it's a very scary space we're moving in. Again, as I said, common sense is kind of the way that we're going to try and mitigate and combat that until such time as the detection tools actually catch up with the creation tools.
Jean Leroux, thank you very much indeed, Research Associate for the Sub-Saharan Africa region at the Atlantic Council's Digital Forensic Research Lab. Really bringing it into your mediated conversation this morning. Gail Schimmel is the CEO at the Advertising Regulatory Board, and starting us off today, Gerhard van der Venter is the Head of Enforcement at the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. Well, an important conversation. Please be careful with who you give your money to. I think you really just can't, in a way, trust anything that you see online. You've actually got to look at other adverts, speak to people. That's the other thing. Do that, just to make sure you can trust the institution, really would be my advice. Speaking of trust, Kathy is next. We will see you tomorrow from Mdu, Zilma, Stanza, Melissa, myself. Look after yourself. You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, DA to march against gang violence in Gqeberha and a new witness expected in Mehiwa murder trial. Good morning. The DA in the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality will today march against gang violence in the northern areas of Gqeberha. The march is in honor of 3-year-old Emilio Hutchinson, who was killed by a bullet while sitting inside his home during a gang shootout. DA federal leader Helen Zille will be leading the march. The DA caucus leader in the municipality, Ratief Odendaal, says crime in the area is out of control.
We've reached this stage of our lives in Nelson Mandela Bay where residents can no longer accept it. We can't have a 3-year-old child being killed in the place of safety in their home. We can't have grandmothers being killed. This is happening every day, and unfortunately, most people don't blink an eye. They continue with their lives. But for the people affected by these heinous crimes, life doesn't really just go on.
In election news, respondents who wish to oppose the IEC's bid to appeal the electoral court order, which paved the way for former President Jacob Zuma to remain on the Umkhonto weSizwe Party's candidate list, have until today to file answering affidavits in the Constitutional Court. This comes after the Apex Court issued directions in the IEC's application, just weeks shy of the 2024 polls. Lawyers on behalf of the first and second respondent, Umkhonto weSizwe Political Party and Zuma, have however written to the Apex Court to seek an extension until next week Tuesday. Kenny Mapanga reports.
In the letter dated 24 April 2024, the MK Party and former President Zuma's lawyer states that the time afforded to the respondents is unreasonably short and that it would be impossible to furnish a meaningful answering affidavit within 24 hours. The IEC approached the Apex Court seeking an urgent hearing to bring finality on Section 47, subsection 1E of the Constitution before any votes are cast.
A new witness is expected to take the stand in the Senzo Mehiwa murder trial at the High Court in Pretoria. This after the investigating officer in the case, Patu Mukhola, concluded her testimony yesterday. 5 men are standing trial for the 2014 murder of the Bafana captain. Mukhola told the court the alleged mastermind is known to them as Mehiwa's former girlfriend Kelly Kumalo. Before adjourning the matter, Judge Rata Mukhetleng dealt with allegations of threats and intimidation on one of the defense counsels, Tulani Mgomezulu.
It appears that there were 2 persons who visited his home in the morning, very suspicious movements and persons. Fortunately, when they wanted to enter the premises of Mr. Mgomezulu, the dogs barked, and these 2 persons are known to him. He suspects they were out to harm him or kill him, because this is what happens in South Africa. So this court, as an officer of the court, Mr. Mgomezulu, is entitled to all the protection the South African police can accord to him.
The City of Cape Town's Transport Enforcement Unit has arrested a taxi driver for allegedly driving recklessly, including on the wrong side of the road at Mfuleni on the Cape Flats. Traffic spokesperson Maxine Pizadenote says the driver was allegedly driving into oncoming traffic and cutting off vehicles. She says officials managed to stop the driver, but he refused to open the door or window of the taxi.
In Mufuleni, during morning peak, Transport Enforcement Unit officers arrested a taxi driver on a number of charges. He had been driving on the wrong side of the road into oncoming traffic and then refused to cooperate with the officers. The driver also had a firearm tucked into his belt, which was licensed. Among the charges are reckless and negligent driving, resisting arrest, and not carrying a firearm as prescribed by law.
And finally, it has been confirmed in Haiti that the long-awaited installation of a presidential transition council will take place today. The Prime Minister Ariel Henry last month said he would step down after gangs prevented him from returning to the country from an overseas trip. The BBC's Yusuf Tahir reports.
The swearing-in ceremony is due to take place at the Prime Minister's office on the outskirts of the capital, Port-au-Prince. The original venue, Haiti's National Palace, has repeatedly been attacked by armed groups, including in the past few days. The United Nations said the situation in Haiti is catastrophic, with the capital almost completely cut off by armed groups. A high-profile gang leader, Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, has insisted that talks over Haiti's political future must include the gangs.
Recapping the top story, the DA in the Nelson Mandela Bay municipality will today march against gang violence in the northern areas of Gqeberha. The march is in honor of 3-year-old Emilio Hutchinson, who was killed by a bullet while sitting inside his home during a gang shootout. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide.
Did you know? South Africans consume more water per person per day than the world average. We use approximately 237 litres of water per person per day, while the world average stands at 173 litres of water per person per day. To achieve water for all, each one of us needs to use water sparingly and more efficiently. We can do this by ensuring that we don't waste water. Take 2-minute showers, fix our dripping taps, and use buckets to wash our cars, amongst others. #SaveWater. Every drop counts. This message is brought to you by the Department of Water and Sanitation.
Hello, Your Choice Online.
Hi, I need you to help me make a choice.
Well, with Ford, you get to make your own choices, like on a new Ford Ranger, Ford Puma, Ford Everest, and the Ford Tornado bus. There's a flexible deal for every budget at your nearest Ford dealership today. Limited time offer. Your Ford, your choice. T&Cs apply.
Character will be tested between the great giants of the beautiful game. RB Leipzig and Borussia Dortmund understand that the first prize is unreachable. However, they want to finish as high as possible. This is the Bundesliga. Football as it's meant to be. Catch RB Leipzig versus Borussia Dortmund on Saturday, 27 April at 3 p.m. Live on SABC3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. #We love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Talking Point with Kathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Well, the passbook was a document which all Africans had to carry from the age of 16. They had to produce it on demand. It was a criminal offence to fail to produce it on demand.
It was always in my back pocket. It was easy because when they say pass, you have to go to the back and then produce it and give it to this man. He knows what he's looking for.
The women's passes, where it was a long, could be about 8 inches long. Then they made, because it's for women, they made a pouch that long with a string. So, and when people were saying, we forget them, they say, put them around your necks. And then you'd see women with, they say, this is farm women, we will not do that.
The document was known by many names. Pass, ID book, reference book. It also gained a nickname from the Afrikaans word for stupid. It became the dom pass, the stupid pass.
Yeah, it was not a pass, it was a dom pass. At that time, it was a very hard time for us because you can't go anywhere if you haven't got that pass. You can't get job, you can't do nothing if you haven't got that pass.
The one thing that worried me or us as young girls and our mothers was that, hey, are we going to be running? Because you could see, suddenly you hear footsteps. What's up? Somebody must have forgotten a pass.
The children of today don't know what we went through. When I tell my son that, you'd go out of the house and immediately someone along the road says, oh, I've forgotten my ID. Then you make a U-turn and you just pray you don't meet police in between until you arrive at home and look for the trousers you had the previous night. So, oh, here's my trousers. I've just changed trousers. Search, get your pass, and out you go. So there was no happiness about it because it was hanging over your head all the time to say, pass, pass, pass. And immediately you see a policeman, the first thing you think of, you feel do I have my pass? You must actually feel this thing in your back pocket.
Part that was also not beautiful about the male side, which we would see, was you would see when they get them, if maybe the van is far, then they would be walking handcuffed two like sheep until they go to the van that picks them up. But then we're wondering, are we also going to be exposed to that? I mean, where's my pride? Where's my young womanhood? And which guys will see me having forgotten my ID?